Wow, that's horrible quality.
Linde.
How do, sir?
Good. How you doing?
Pretty good. I'm recording. I'm recording. Yay. Those are the fancy words I want to hear. I did that like 2 months ago. I was like, oh, I'm on too early. I'm just going to pause it. And forgot to hit resume. And so entire day's class, I just forgot. Well, somewhere is that. All right. I've never tried doing this before, but I'm on Facebook Live and on here at the exact same time on Zoom at the same
Wow.
time. So we'll see what happens.
That's cool.
As we forgot, I have the last Friday in every month I do a herbal open forum where it's all online rather than in person because sometimes there's a class going on here. So I just sit at home and do it. And we forgot to cancel it. So some people are expecting that.
This is a great topic for them too.
Yeah, it is. Like everybody should have this, even if you're
There's so many programs.
it keeps you off the streets, without a doubt. Yeah, this is one. I used to do this twice a year, every year because it was the biggest roadblock I ever saw. Hello. And I was going to say, pick a chair, but it's probably going to be a full house if everybody shows up that said they were.
Hey, Chrissy.
Where in here is the chairs?
How you doing?
Okay.
Tired. Most is all day. Yes. Actually,
As long as I stay away from the kid.
same place we ate before that little ginger place.
Okay.
That was good.
Ah, presumably it's all working. Yeah. Make sure that they are squared away.
That was Dr. Gardner's.
It was so fun.
Was it?
Yeah, I love it.
Ah,
I love it so much.
I always sneeze in there.
Oh, yeah. There was
Was Grant there?
He was. Grant was there. Emma, she's in your food.
Yes.
And you know Taylor.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay.
Taylor was there. And Carla.
Okay. Wow. Dr. Gardner had a house full.
Well, we like some came in, some left like that.
Oh, okay.
And yeah.
I love Dr. Gardner.
I love that she was so willing to, she was just so willing to like explain the formula, you know what I mean? Like she
Yeah.
was so.
Say, if any of you haven't been here before, feel free to go check out the garden in the back. It is warm out, but it is. All right, they're online. Make sure that's working. Yay.
Do you have, look, I'm hidden. Do you have something?
Hmm.
Look,
That,
I'm here. I'm not here.
that is really weird.
Mhm. Oh, got it.
Oh, weird. Oh, is there a
Okay,
little
so there's a
thingy
little
closing
thingy to
thing?
close it and then open it.
Oh, that's really good to know.
Are you recording already?
Yes,
Okay.
so you're famous. I don't know whether anybody's going to actually come on here, but so there's a way for me to tell. Hey. Online. Oh, that is not working. Right, so that's going on to the phone. That's what I was afraid of. That works. Hmm. Uh, uh, let's go back because that's literally not going to work. Right. Okay.
So small.
Wow.
Smartest one in our class.
Oh,
She also works in the Western Women's, so she'll experience that.
wow. Anybody else from school coming?
I hope so.
Yeah,
We
right.
spread the word.
Cool. All right. This is might work. Oh, I canceled all of that stuff. I've got 2 minutes. I can do it. Oh, I, I should be. Hmm. Oh, I'm not gonna let me do that. All right, that's just not gonna happen. I'm gonna try. Oh well. Yeah, I'll leave everybody online for a minute. My life will be easier with that. And I will say for folks online, it is challenging for me to monitor the chat. I'm going to stick it up here, but I will do my best if you have questions. But for sure, I'll leave time at the end for questions as we go. Ugh. I know it's 6 o'clock, but we'll give people a chance to walk in the door. Love it when there's faces I don't know. I don't do that.
Like the way you had positive, not just negative.
Yeah, that is something that is not talked about enough. Uh, it's a huge piece of herbalism we're not taking advantage of. And time allowing, we will talk about it. I do like to rant a bit. What up, Summer? I was like, I know your face.
Hello, I was on mute, sorry.
No, perfect. Oh, good. Right. It's always funny. It's like I forget what platform I'm on. So when I do the Facebook Live, it's like, no, you can only type in the chat. But there you go. If I don't see it in the chat, feel free to unmute yourselves and shout it out. I'm ADD, so I can keep up. Still got a few more walking in the door. They get 5 minutes, then we start without them. Teach them to come in.
What an amazing way to spend a Friday.
Hmm. Came with a question. All right, wait a second. I got to back up and see what we got here. I changed my blood pressure meds to Sartan. I took it with turmeric and fenugreek among other stuff ones. Decreased urine flow from it. That is an interesting one. Um, we may come, we're definitely going to talk about blood pressure meds here shortly. That can be a side effect specifically. That can be a specific side effect of the losartan, actually. But there's another couple of possible reasons. Fenugreek, or the fenugreek in particular, might be your issue there, but it could be any of the other supplements as well. All right. Heck with everybody else. I think it's 5 after. That's all the time they get. Oh no, they get 2 more minutes. Fine. I am notorious for running over a little bit. So hattie. Yeah, it's like I know some of the faces, but not all. Normally in a class I do intros, but I'm not going to do that tonight. Everybody introduce themselves just because there's too many, and I have, as is my norm, too many slides to actually cover. So I'm just going to talk fast, and I have a few new slides in here. Some just for fun and some that I think need, well, I had to update a lot of stuff, like some of the links and so forth that I've got at the end. Um, Although you're more than welcome to take a million notes, we'll email out a copy of the whole recording and the PowerPoint at the end. So don't feel like you get, I actually want you all to know this. So it might take 2 days for it to get to you, but you're all going to get the recording, online folks and in-person folks. So all right, I'm going to start babbling. If you don't know, I'm Bob, and this is might as well be my home. And if you're not familiar with it, we've got 3 acupuncturists here, 3 herbalists, and everybody's an herbalist, but some people only do herbs. So the acupuncturists have a license and sick pokey things in people. The herbalists just work with herbs and diet, both Western and Chinese herbs. And we've got a garden out back. There's a half-acre property, which is amazing. So we just opened up a tea truck back there. So we got tea and coffee Thursday through Sunday. And we're trying to make it's, I know it's hot out, so it's only open from 8 until 2. But we have Mr. Fans and some cool things. We got hammocks and stuff. There's a plant nursery back there. But I will say, whether you come and get a cup of tea or coffee doesn't matter. The garden's out there for you to utilize, and all the plants that you see out there, including the weeds, are either food or medicine. And so I want the garden to be used. I've got propaganda coming up in one of the slides, but and then also you see there's 1 or 2 herbs out there. Those are always available for you. If you're like, oh, I want $1 worth of chamomile, you can always come in and get herbs. If you say, what do you got for? We're going to say an appointment. And then, oh yeah, there's an herb school here. So the herb school, we do Western and Chinese program from beginner all the way through clinical practice. But there's also, like this class, free classes and not free classes that are just for the general public to come who want to just put their toe in the water and enjoy some of the classes. So those are all open to everybody to participate. It's funny. So let me get to it. So I always like to talk about my lineage or my heritage. I've been playing with herbs for a really long time. I probably started learning about edible plants up in the Northeast when I was like 8 or 10 years old. And when I was thinking I was older, but it looks like when I was 12 is when I moved down to the Bahamas with my mom. And very early on, I started working with Noel Boodle here. And I didn't know the term. I didn't know the term shaman at the time, but I would have called him that now. He was somebody we'd just sit on the shore cracking out conch. He was a conch and lobster fisherman, and I worked with him for a number of years on a commercial fishing boat. And we'd be cracking conch out. And he's like, "Oh, you see that bush over there? And tell me about how it was used for medicine or for more spiritual practices." Which, as a punk kid, 13, 14 years old, I really didn't care. I mean, I did. I was excited about it, and I still like, I don't remember what we used to call that or what to use it for. So I'm still continuing to relearn all those things. I basically, it was assumed I was going to be a doctor when I grew up. Decided I really didn't like school. You guys are getting the really Reader's Digest version. I'm sorry, I wanted to get the good stuff. But basically was studying herbs and supplements since fairly intensely from about the age of 14 on. I went to Admiral Farragut here in my yearbook. My nickname was Dr. Bob because I was hanging out supplements and herbs and crap since then. And at some point decided I hated school, gave up my full ride academic scholarship, enlisted in the Army because that's smart. And from there, spent 2 years in the military, got out for 3 years, lived on a sailboat for 3 years, lived in the Everglades for about probably 6 months of that. And then my boat sank, so I went back into the military, spent some time over in Germany, and took a little side excursion to Desert Storm. I came back with whatever Desert Storm syndrome was. And I'm a workaholic. I've always it would take me an hour to go through half my resume. I'm usually doing 2 or 3 jobs. I like that because I'm crazy. But ultimately, I went from workaholic to unable to work. VA said I was fine. Everybody said you were fine. The labs came out vaguely normal. And yet there was no solutions. And all the herbal stuff that I thought I knew didn't work. Half of them actually made me worse. All the things we thought were like, oh, this is good for. So somebody suggested I go to the local acupuncture school. We had one here in St. Pete. And I went and I had a horrible experience. I am deathly afraid of needles. And the student intern there, when I said, like, seriously, I'm freaked out by what y'all are doing, goes, ooh, big tough army guy, you can hang. I did not get better. I was talked into going back a second time. And the second time, somebody took the time to explain to me that there was a system outside the Western medical construct. The idea of we can figure out what's going on based on a system of energetics, and you're going to see that kind of snuck in all of my slides here. The idea that we can just, the Chinese say cool things like yin and yang, but we can see that there is a system in every traditional culture in the world. And it breaks down into something very basic. Are you hot or cold, wet or dry, deficient or excess, tense or lax? And based on those ideas, we can recommend herbs. That's the way it worked for 10,000 years. It's only now that we say St. John's wort's good for depression, echinacea for colds and flu. Because the reality is, everybody has experience with COVID now. All y'all had COVID different. Some of you were like, whatever, I was tired for 3 days. And other people were hospitalized or died. And yet it was the same disease. We all experienced it differently. So why would we give the same medicine, herbal medicine, even though you were experiencing it differently? And so that's going to figure into this picture a lot. And I talk about that as much as I can, because some of you already do it. You just never thought about it. And so that's really, I want people to leave here thinking more than anything. Whoops. So I consider Noel one of my primary teachers. If I can click the slides, it will be better. This is the short list. There are many more people I would say have influenced me greatly, and I'm not going to spend my time telling you about all of them, but you'll hear me reference a lot of these people. So needless to say, I did get better, and I decided I could do, oh, that is not what I wanted to do. All right, that is certainly not what I want to do. We're just going to do that. So I got better and decided I now had to decide one more career. So I ran away to acupuncture school, and I love acupuncture. I love the diagnostic system. I like having access to putting pokey things in people. I would say 78% of my patients are herbs only, because I'm an herbalist. That's what I want to spend my time doing. I like talking about diet and lifestyle because all of that impacts our health. When I was in school, I was the guy who showed up with piles of books, but they were mostly Western herbs. So I was constantly referring back and forth, trying to make the connections of what I already knew to what I was learning and trying to find some intersection between the two. And one of the things I ran into is when we were in floating meeting controls. I hate the new system they created for Zoom. And this is actually vaguely relevant. This is one of the new slides that I just Paul Bergner, really good herbalist out west, posted this on Facebook the other day, and I just thought it was brilliant. But the reason for this class is I found that the fear that people who were going to see the acupuncturist, they were fearful of the herbs we recommended, either quality control issues or the doctor said herbs are scary. As our culture here in America, we understand a sharp object going into our bed makes us better. And the idea of dirty plants is foreign to so many of us. And so I started, as I was seeing patients as a student practitioner, I was like, what's your hesitation? I would build enough rapport that they were like, yeah, because I think they're creepy, or they smell funny, or they taste bad. And they're right. All of that is true. And so, but the biggest thing was they were in fear because most people are on prescription meds. That's normal, right? It's very normal. Like, I don't even blink when somebody walks in with 10 prescription meds. And then you throw in 5 or 6 supplements, and now I want to put in an herb formula, which might be made up of 5 or 10 herbs. Like, holy crap, nobody can understand that. And so I needed to be able to make people feel like, hey, no, this is okay. We are trained in this stuff. And I put all of my efforts into learning this. Like literally, if there's a class on drug interactions, when I go to conferences, I don't care how many times I've taken a class with somebody, I will take the class again. I go to conferences, herbal conferences in particular, because there's always a new update every year. There's some new thing that some research is hinting at, or there's a new medication. We need to understand how it's processed through the body. But this was something that was really funny. And I try so hard. I don't like to bash Western medicine. I get hit by a truck. I want all the doctors. I go see doctors. I get blood work. I don't take any medications. Lucky me. And I am lucky because of that, right? And I've managed to avoid more serious illness. But it's always been interesting to me, the caduceus, and this is not the caduceus. This is a different one, was about natural medicine. The healing power of natural medicine is wrapped up into the symbol. But Western medicine doesn't use this symbol. They actually use the caduceus, which is this symbol, which started in the early 1900s. And I had to look this up because I don't believe anything I read on the internet. So I was like, well, I will fact check this crap. And so where was it? The caduceus is associated with Hermes. Nope, that's the wrong one. Commerce, trickery, and negotiation. I don't think that represents healthcare. And so it was some mistake. Somebody thought it was cool looking. It is a cool looking symbol. I'll give them that. And the reality is, I prefer this idea of using nature and the body's natural ability to heal itself when given the opportunity to be in balance. But that's hard because we get hit by trucks. Stuff happens. And so sometimes we do need that medical industry. And I like blood work. I like all of that. I'm not going to read all that to you, I promise. I just found it fascinating. Sorry, propaganda page. Cool stuff coming up. The next free class is talking about kava and kratom. And I would say I take a very balanced view of all of that. If you like kava and kratom, I'll actually make it taste good. I'll make some to give around, just if anybody wants to try it. Weird classes that need some explanation. For any of you who have ever come to like student clinic or doctor's clinic, we put funny looking things on your ear or magnets and things like that. I've taught that to the general public before. My students get a more formal class in it in both the Western and Chinese program, but it's something I can teach in 3 hours. So I was like, why don't I teach the general public to do that themselves? So that's not me just talking about how cool auricular therapy is, but actually showing you the anatomy and physiology of the ear. And we primarily use it for stress and pain. So even though it's scary and says the Master Series, it's stuff that people don't normally get. My Master Series classes, I started doing those like just 2 years ago, and it was always interesting because I go and I teach cool classes at these national and international conferences, and they're on unique subjects. But my students, they kind of get it interspersed in there, but they never actually, unless they go to the conference, they don't get that class. So I started pulling out the ones that I'm usually teaching something I'm fascinated by. And so I was like, you know what? Why am I not teaching those for all the folks here and for the students who want to get a more formal thing on that? So the two coming, I just did one on treating the treatment and diagnosis of melanated patient. In case y'all didn't know it, if some people have darker or lighter skin, disease shows up differently, and the visual cues that we look at that. And so how do we use that? I think everybody vaguely in the medical profession should take that class. I'm biased. And I think the other one was on digestion. Oh, it was food sensitivities. That's what it was. And so those are recorded if anybody wants them. They're always better in person. There's I don't teach all of these. The herbal medicine making series, those are open to everybody. I don't usually teach those. I really like teaching those. It's like 2 hours of a single class on a single herb. The full moon market, any of you been here for the full moon market? It's the full moonish Friday. It's a drum circle and vendors. I think it's fun. It's a free event. It's the garden is beautiful at night. So I encourage you all to show up. It's coming up on the 20th, weather permitting. If it's raining, we ain't doing it. Auricular therapy, one of our acupuncturists teaching that. It's a little bit more about how we use it. And she's going, oops, that is not what I wanted to do. Oh, I screwed something up. There we go. And I really did screw that up, didn't I? They changed Zoom changed their stuff recently, and I have not gotten used to it, nor do I like it. Herbal Open Forum, technically that's what's going on tonight. That's free. It's online only. Occasionally I'll do it in person, but like there's another class going on there in here on cordyceps mushroom. But that's yeah, everybody has a million questions, and one person online just asked me about adverse reaction she had, probably to fenugreek. Um, like that's so perfect to ask then, because without a full medical history, and you can type in your questions, you can mail them in ahead of time. I usually put a theme on it, but I'm like, bring it. You get to pick my brain for 2 hours, and I started that during COVID because I missed doing this. And I was just like, I don't know, that's kind of cool. I'm gonna keep doing it. So occasionally I have to cancel it because I have conflicts, but I've done it while I'm out camping and doing other stuff. So I try to do it all the time. I just, sorry, I was doing a podcast for a while and I'd say that beforehand. So I am not your doctor now. So let's get to the good stuff here. So it's really funny. I always say our knowledge, the knowledge we have available to us changes constantly. And so you can't say, I took a class 20 years ago and feel safe and secure that you are up to date and knowing stuff. And when we talk about medicine, medicine is changing, Western medicine, as we know it, is changing so rapidly. To try to keep up with that and what's good, what's bad is next to impossible. Like I have to see patients and do stuff I have to teach. I was like, I can't sit there 24 hours a day reading all the materials. So I have to pick and choose. And it's so funny. And this is just a story. I think I was in the third grade. It was my first science class, and mom was a science writer. That's probably why I was assumed I was going to be a doctor. She said, I want you to really impress your science teacher. I want you to learn ontology recapitulates phylogeny. And somehow this third grader memorized this line. I still know it to this day. I don't have to read it on my stupid screen. And it's the idea that ontogeny is the development of the egg or the fetus. Recapitulates is fancy talk for repeats. Phylogeny, the phylum. So at some point we had gills and a tail and all that kind of stuff. And so this is a theory that was around actually for about 150 years or so. And I very proudly walked into my science teacher and mumbled that out. And unfortunately, I found out that's not true. The science changed. So it's fun to say that, but about 1950, when my mom left med school, they found out that that was not exactly correct. It's similar, but not identical. And so yes, at some point we have gills and things like that. So we have to constantly fact check her. I had to fact check myself and go, oh, dang, she was wrong. Uh, so I encourage you, even if you've taken this class before, come back in a year or two, take it again. I will teach this class every year. And I will always change it and update it as much as I can. It's important, it's really easy to bash the Western medicine. And we always talk about the profit margin and the pharmaceutical industry and all of that. I'm sorry, the herbal medicine industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. We are more likely to delude people and adulterate our products and lie out our butts, probably more so than Western medicine. There are standards they have to maintain on what they say. And so I think it's important we recognize that we are an industry the same way as anybody else is an industry. And it has fraud and abuse in there in the same way every industry does. And so really like fact checking yourself, like, oh, we're perfect. We play with plants. We are, but whatever. It's one of the things, it's really hard. One of my Spanish needle, Biden's alba. Some of you have seen that on the herb walks. It's the daisy looking little white flower that pisses you off constantly. I love prescribing that for my patients. Probably it is the most commonly prescribed herb for me. And I'm like, hold on. I run outside. I was like, do you have this in your yard? And they're like, yeah. I was like, this is what you need to take every day. They were like, can I get it in a pill? I want to give them free medicine. I want to educate them on that. And most people don't want that. They'd rather have something that's in a pill or a bottle, or at least a tea that's ground up and already done for them. And so I try to step out of this system. Yeah, good luck with that. And ultimately, I still got rent to pay. So I'm going to do my best to cover some of these issues because there are many issues, both from our side, from the herbalist side, manufacturing, distribution, And there's also some bullshit out there. And so I want to make sure that like I beat up on myself as well as the folks that seem to have issues with the herbal industry as a whole. Um, and I'm going to say, like, I know some of y'all, and you're in the industry, you're formally trained, but I'm going to guess some of you are going to the health food store and buying some stuff or buying stuff offline. And there is some really key things that are important for you to like put in your brain while you're buying these things so that you're getting quality products. And there's certain areas in the supplement realm that are fraught with fraud. And so it's so important that we, look at everything with a little bit of a side eye. Um, and one of the things that's important is most herbalists, and I shouldn't say this, some are better than others. I'm not the best in the bunch, but when it comes to pharmacological knowledge of, I am not a pharmacist. And any of y'all are pharmacists, jump in when I screw something up. I'm okay with that. I did that once. I had they emailed me. Were like, we just graduated from pharmacy school. Pharmacists are PhDs. They're super smart people. They're better educated than most doctors when it comes to the pharmacological stuff. And I got so intimidated because I don't know that depth of science. And it's a long story, but I was growing aconite, which is a deadly poison, or a lovely tonic in Chinese medicine. And so it was in bloom, and I was like, I'm going to change the way I teach this class. I'm going to show them how what they would conceive of as being this horrible, dangerous thing in a supplement, how safe it is. And so I clipped the flower and I brought it in. I was like, oh, I can talk more all about it. And I'm petting it the whole time. And I had pre-soaked some futsa, which is the Chinese herb that we use on a regular basis, long term, all the time. And I reached into some water where it had been soaking, and I didn't wash my hands first. And so I ate it, and I got this numbing tingling that started at my feet because I ate it. And that's one of the indications of aconite poisoning. And it started to move up. If it had made it to my lungs, I would have been dead. Luckily, I remember ginger was one of the antidotes for aconite poisoning. So I literally had just gotten this really good concentrated ginger formula and said, I literally kept talking, even though I was consciously in my head going, oh shit, I've just poisoned myself. And I'm like, and if I had accidentally poisoned myself, I could just reach, and it made it maybe to my waist and it went back down. All good. Uh, so it is, we don't have to be as smart as a pharmacist because we can go talk to a pharmacist. We can find that material online, but we need to understand some of the function of medications. If it's your own medication, why are you taking that medication? It's important to look at that. And you'll see me talk about this a lot as far as like, if we're taking an herb and a drug for the same thing, we're going to run into problems because they both work. And so now we're going to have too much of something. We also in herbalism, we're like, oh, Chinese medicine. I'm gonna beat up on Chinese medicine. Sorry, you're my target, even though you're okay. We saw, oh, it moves blood. Does that mean it's a blood thinner? Does it change the clotting time? So herbal and Western herbalists, we have an even more imprecise. We talk about alteratives. They normalize your blood. The hell does that mean? Right? What if I'm anemic? Is it going to fix that? It doesn't. And so there's a lot of really weird languaging that we need to be able to translate because the doctors aren't going to learn our language. And so we have to learn their language so that we can communicate better. And the understanding of pharmacology, pharmacokinetics, and dynamics, don't worry, I got a slide on that. That just means, ooh, what's it for and how's it processed through our body and eliminate through our body. Quality control, we're going to talk about that a little bit, but that's literally about quality control. And if you're really geeky, trying to figure out research. Because honestly, there isn't a lot of good research on herbs. There is research, but not to the level of pharmaceutical research on all of this. And I probably won't get a chance to talk about it, but if you're a practitioner, one of the mistakes, and I don't know about y'all, I'm on all the stupid Facebook forums. Oh, what do you take for cancer? That is, and people are answering that question. Hundreds of people are answering that question. What type of cancer? What other treatments? What medication? I've never seen anybody ask those questions. So if either the client isn't giving us the information that we need, or we're not smart enough to ask the questions, and we're dealing with a life-threatening or serious complex disease, we're going to run into problems. And so too often, AI and Google searches will kill you when it comes to the complexity of the human body. And it is, this isn't a selfless plug. It is the reason why you should go see an herbalist. I don't care whether it's me or not, but you should see an herbalist. um, One of my pet peeves is, oh, they're unregulated. We are actually highly regulated as herbalists. Um, we are not regulated to the level of the pharmaceutical drugs. They're way more regulated than we are, without a doubt. But there is federal laws, the current good manufacturing practices, and DSHEA, Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act, have been in place for 30 years now. And there was laws before that, but those laws were tightened up around 1990-ish. And Is that mean that everybody follows the law? Of course not. People breaking the law all the time. Pharmaceutical companies, some small ones doing that, doctors diluting chemotherapy and things. Sorry, I primarily see cancer, so I've got all the chemo bad stories. But there literally was a doctor up in the Midwest who was diluting his chemo. Like, that doesn't mean pharmaceutical drugs are bad. That means that person was bad. And they should be in jail. I think they are. And so we have the same issues. So quality control is just to make sure that what says is in the bottle, and that nobody pooped in the bottle. Unless it's a Chinese herb, then we want flying squirrel poop in our bottles. Chinese herbs, we use some weird stuff. Don't worry about the fancy $5 words here. Great if you're a student or a practitioner. For the general public, it's the concepts. If you're taking a blood pressure medication, we can just stop there. It lowers the blood pressure. There are different types of blood pressure medicines that affect the body in different ways, and that's more information, which is good. So the pharmacodynamics is about what's that? Why are you taking it? The pharmacokinetics, boy, it's hard to say both of those in one mouthful, is how is that drug going through your body? Are you eating it? Are you inhaling it? Are you injecting it? Is that a suppository? IV versus IM, intramuscular, right? And because the drugs are better researched, we can say it's processed primarily through the liver, in certain pathways through the liver, it's excreted through the urine, it's excreted through the poop. All of those are fairly known things. And so if we understand how herbs work, we can see if those are going to be screwing each other up. And we're going to find a fairly easy way to understand that here in a second. But when we're thinking about medications in particular, think about, why am I taking this? How's it going through my body? That's really what the PD and the PK is, which is way easier to say PD and PK. Whether you're practicing herbalist, acupuncturist, or for yourself, there are things that need to be taken into account when treating any person with anything. Honestly, I would say the same is true. Like, if you're using food as medicine, probably the best medicine, this might be important. And I took this from a pharmaceutical presentation, not an herbal presentation. And I will tell you, these are important. If we're taking a handful of supplements, if we're taking a handful of drugs, there's going to be some sort of an interaction with drugs. If you're taking 4 or more medications, there is zero research about what those medications are doing. And really, 10 meds is not out of the ordinary. So they can guess, well, these go through this pathway and these go through that pathway, so they're probably okay. 2 or 3, like, it's very common to do a blood pressure med with a diuretic. That's very normal. That's well researched and has a long track record. So when we start throwing a half a dozen, 15, 20 medications, I think my record moved up to 30 medications for somebody. They have no idea. I think most doctors would even tell you, you're probably making that person sicker with those meds, and nobody's taking the time to sort through it because it's coming from different doctors, which is even more scary. And so I love pharmacists for that, by the way. You take your whole collection of stuff, you walk into your pharmacist and schedule an appointment with your pharmacist and go, help. There's it's not common, but there are enough stories in hospice. They take away all the medications that aren't like there to make you comfortable, like pain or life threat. So they get rid of the cholesterol med. They get rid of a bunch of stuff because they're assuming you're going to be dead in 6 months. And people get better and check out of hospice because they took away most of their medications except for the bare minimum. So not to say that's a good thing to do on everybody. Some people need more meds. But really, this is an important subject. And as somebody who's been using herbs formally full time for over 20 years now, herb drug interactions do happen, but they're rare. And it's usually because of quality control or people not getting the full story from stuff. Um, very small, very young, or very old, different system, right? And so we should be taking that into account. If somebody's pregnant or breastfeeding, that's a big deal. Like there are so many herbs that are contraindicated in both. And even if it says it's safe with breastfeeding, here's a weird thing. Asparagus, totally fine, safe, yummy, healthy food will change the flavor of the breast milk and the baby may stop feeding. If it's like, oh, it's springtime, all the asparagus is in the stores, I can't wait to get some, and you're still breastfeeding, that baby's going to go, get that smelly stuff away from me. And that's a genetic trait, whether that happens or not. So even with food, we should be thinking about it if we're in a special situation. Hereditary, anybody heard that some people have a genetic trait that says they don't like cilantro, right? Tastes like soap for a segment of society. It's harder to see those things. But when we start to think about that, celiac disease, right? That's not a sensitivity. That's a genetic allergy to wheat, gluten. And so there are many food sensitivities or genetic allergies that are passed on. And so recognizing that like, this herb might be good for most people, but it's not good for you because of that. And I'll just say this, if any of you have a latex sensitivity, Google foods high in latex later. It is my pet peeve that seems to be the forgotten food sensitivity, and I'm finding it more and more common. I'm guessing a lot of you have either had a lot of interaction with the medical system or are in the medical field in some form or fashion, which means you're at higher risk to having a latex sensitivity because you play with latex a lot. Certain disease states, especially digestive issues, right? Digestive issues change your absorption of medications. They also change the absorption of your herbs or your supplements. And so we have to, to give like, I'm sure most of you, dandelion's good for the liver, right? Detoxes the liver. It's a drying herb, so it can cause constipation. And it does. It really seems to remove, and I don't even like the word toxins, but it seems to do really good stuff for the liver. What if you're not pooping? You just dumped all of these toxins you're talking about into their bowels to get reabsorbed because they're not pooping every day. So we have to look at what are we doing in a particular health state that they're having of whether that's good or not. Like, sure, I want a healthy liver, but I don't want to recirculate yucky stuff. So really thinking about that's so important. And it's so funny. Remember, this came from a pharmaceutical presentation. This was not about herbs. This was about drugs. Counterfeit or adulterated medications is the biggest concern for the medical industry in this century, that there is fraud going on constantly with that. And we hear about drug recalls, we hear about stuff that's adulterated, that doesn't have the right amount of a particular drug in there, either too much or too little. It's really, and most of our medications are made overseas. And so there is not an FDA guy sitting there watching them stamp out every capsule or pill. It's literally every couple of years they get around to make sure there's no rats running around the factory, like for real. There is also, generics. Yay, they're so much cheaper and the insurance will pay for it. The problem with generics is they do have the exact same, and this is required by law, the exact same pharmaceutical active ingredient in it. But all the rest of the stuff does not have to be the same. And so all of your fillers, binders, lubricants, colors, all of that, they really don't give a crap. And so a lot of those people have allergic reactions to those, they have adverse reactions, or it causes so much inflammation in the body, the drug stops working. And so there is a good argument to, if you can afford it, to get the real stuff. When it comes to herbs, they lie, 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 lie. About what its function is, whether it actually does anything, who it's right for. And I will tell you, I don't know of any herbs that's right for everybody. Maybe water, I guess vegetables. But when we start to look at therapeutic dosing of this stuff, it's really important that we are making sure that we're taking the right stuff. But it is so common for them to put pharmaceutical drugs inside of our herbs. Like if you're like, it's a miracle. I just, I raised the dead, sexual function, sleep. If it's so good and you just bought it off the internet, is like better than the drugs you take for that, it's probably laced with 2 or 3 medications. And I will tell you a story. I love to tell stories. Um, one of my patients, I've been working on her for a while and fixed a bunch of stuff, but I literally hadn't had good success with her sleep. She really struggled with sleep, and I tried most everything I could think of. And she was like, "Well, I went to my chiropractor and he gave me this." And I was like, "I don't know what this is." And it was an herb. It was a bunch of Chinese herbs, they claimed, in this tiny little capsule. She said, and before checking with me, she took it one, like, smaller than the smallest little pill you can think of. And she slept for 16 hours. And I'm like, there's not an herb on the planet, maybe opium, maybe a lot of cannabis. I don't know. But there are not many herbs out there that go and knock you out like that, and certainly not in a small capsule. And so it was a bunch of common names on this stupid thing. And I'd heard of 2 or 3 of them, and they had nothing to do with sleep, relaxation, nothing. And so I wrote the company. I was like, hey, can you send me the Latin or the Chinese names for these? I'm unfamiliar with these. And I pull a fast one. I emailed the company saying, I have a patient that is on a lot of medications and super sensitive. I just want to make sure there's no possible interactions. I was just BSing. I just wanted to know. And they's like, oh, here. And they just sent me the common names. I was like, all right, you're hiding something now. And so I lots of herb friends, senior herbalists around. I put them out on some of these internal forums for practitioners. And somebody emailed me back and he goes, oh, yeah, I sent that out to a lab a few years ago to get it tested. It was subclinical dosing of 2 prescription medications. And it was like, yeah, it works great. I was like, you're crazy. So he's still using it as an herbalist. And it's still I actually turned that company in 7 Flowers. I turned that company into the FDA. They're still selling it on the internet. And so there isn't a lot of enforcement, but there is adulteration. When we look at sleep, weight gain, weight loss, sexual function, those are frequently adulterated. Like if it's not coming from a company you know and trust, it's probably adulterated. It's coming from the gas station. I guarantee it's adulterated. Oh yeah, getting high. Yeah. It's never what you think it is in here. Um, there's a term in pharmacy, narrow therapeutic margin. And it's a pretty easy idea. It sounds cool when we say it. But the idea is if you take too much of this medication, something bad's going to happen, or you don't take enough of a medication, something bad's going to happen. And like, of course, you're taking that medication, but like cholesterol meds, if you forget it for a week, nobody cares. Admittedly, birth control's not on here, and that is a big deal, but you won't die, right? But if we're looking at warfarin in particular, when we're taking Coumadin, it is a very strong blood thinner, and there are a few other old school blood thinners that like you take too much, it'll kill you. You don't take enough, you may have a stroke. And so that's one of the biggies that we talk about a lot, but that's rarely being used long term like it used to. That used to be like everybody who'd ever had a heart attack or stroke, they were put on Coumadin for the rest of their life, and it had all kinds of nasty side effects. You couldn't eat vegetables, which got you into problem in the first place, probably. And so I almost never see that anymore. Now they're like on a third evolution of blood thinners that are safe to go on and off again. You don't have to change your diet. And honestly, I haven't seen a lot of herb drug interactions with those. But this one, we have to do our homework for that. And so most of our herbs that have a direct effect on blood thinning are fairly well known. And some are a lot are innuendo, and I'll talk about that one briefly. I had a woman who came in, I forget why, but she was on Coumadin since she was a teenager. And she was the healthiest. I think she got like rheumatic fever or something, got heart valve down. I don't remember what it was, but she was, and she was now in her 60s. And one of the downsides, she was super healthy, trying to do everything right, like to exercise, causes fatigue. So here she is trying to be healthy, and she's like, I can't even walk around the block, and they're upping my dosage constantly. And telling her not to eat vegetables, and she knows vegetables are important for a healthy diet. And so, like, what am I supposed to do? And she was like, can you help me? And I was like, yeah. Like, this is one of those things. This was very early in my practice as well. I was like, probably not. And the problem is they do testing and they check the clotting time, the INR. And she actually was given, she had been doing it for so long, they gave her a machine so she could test herself. And I was like, oh, so you mean we can slowly titrate or ramp up the dosage of an herb while you're testing every day and find out what actually thins your blood? It was so cool. And we did actually come up with a formula, not that she would stop her Coumadin, but she could decrease her dosage so she didn't get side effects. As long as she kept doing both, she was fine. And it was really cool. But like, that's not practical. And I don't even know if that's a normal thing. Um, but it is one of those things when we're doing something like that, lab testing is so important. It really is. Like, we can find out whether we're affecting the clotting time. And we don't want people stroking out. The protease inhibitors, these are mostly our HIV drugs. It's so funny. I used to see when it was 90s, I guess, 90s into the early 2000s, we would see a lot of HIV patients because the treatment that they were getting was either ineffective or horrendous. Now the treatments are really effective and good, where like I have patients who have HIV, but they're not coming to me for that. I'm like, okay, I just need to not screw up what you're doing for medication, right? Just keep taking that stuff because you live a normal, healthy life then. And so this is one where any of those things that are the strong antivirals and like, wait, I take what's the medication for herpes? Oh, I can't think of the name of it. Yeah. Huh? Valtrex, yes. Valtrex is an antiviral. You won't die if you get an outbreak. So there are things like HIV and hepatitis C. Those we have to be super careful with. So the hepatitis C is now that they've got the way better drugs than interferon, those are a shorter course. They're only a small fortune to get that course, but they're a 99% cure, which you notice Western medicine doesn't say the word cure a lot. Hepatitis C is now curable, which is nuts. So we just don't do a lot of herbs during that time, or we're very cautious with it. The HIV drugs, those are the rest of their life. So we have to be really careful with those. Immunosuppressants, I'm going to try to resist telling you every story that I have, but immunosuppressants, when somebody has an autoimmune disorder, they're on immunosuppressants frequently, and that can be challenging. Their immune system is hyperactive, and it's attacking some part of their body. It can be an organ, a tissue. There's lots of different things that autoimmune disorders go after. And so they just suppress the immune system. When you see the commercials, they're like, anybody who's on, has an autoimmune disorder on immunosuppressants, don't take this vaccine or don't take this because your body doesn't have an ability to fight it. You're put at higher risk for catching all the scary diseases because your immune system is literally being held in check. If we use an herb that stimulates your immune system, we have the potential to 100% counteract that drug that causes you to flare up. And that would be bad. And not to try to, the other reason for immunosuppressants is organ replacement. So if you got a new kidney, if you don't suppress the immune system, your body attacks that foreign body, that lung or the kidney or whatever organ they replaced, and that would be bad. An organ's good for about 20, give or take, years. And so if we allow the immune system to attack it, then that's going to shorten that life dramatically. I'll give a very short when you're on immunosuppressants for autoimmune disorders, there's herbs that will help to normalize the immune system that you can use when somebody's not in a flare-up, but you can never use those when they're in a flare-up. And for any of you who have autoimmune disorders, like some days you're great, some days you're crippled. And so the days you're great, we don't have to worry too much. When you're like, oh, tomorrow's going to suck, I shouldn't have had that cookie. Gluten, by the way, is a common trigger for autoimmune disease. You didn't know it. And so really important that we have, when we're dealing with autoimmune, we have one that's meant to treat the pattern, that imbalances that you as an individual have. And with the, when you have a flare up, that you have different herbs that help to suppress that immune system again. Sometimes that's good. With the organ replacement, please don't do that on your own. If you're a licensed practitioner, boy, that is questionable. I've only done it once. I had a gentleman came in, he had a kidney replacement. He did everything right for like 25 years, like unbelievable, ate perfect, measured his proteins and his fats and exercised, and like looked like a poster child, model. And doesn't matter what you're on. At some point, your body's going to figure it out, start to attack the organ, and it did. And he was told that his organ was going to fail around October, November. He was already on the list. He was going to get an organ replacement, and he might have to go on dialysis. And he didn't want to tell his family. So he came to see me. He's like, "Can you get me through the holidays?" I was like, "I have no idea." And what I did was I literally told him, I was like, "I have no clue. I may make this worse. I might make it better. I'll try it with your consent. I will do whatever I can." And I improved his kidneys function. I ignored his immune system, and I got him through till February. And so, like, that was me, like, women of prayer and hoping for the very best. I don't recommend you try that on your own. I literally lost a lot of sleep on that one. Chemotherapy. So I literally, I'm shocked. I've never seen so much cancer in my life as I have the last 5 years or so. It's like cancer's always out there, but I'm seeing younger, rarer, and way more of it. And that also means there's more surgeries and there's more chemotherapy, sometimes more radiation. Chemotherapy is sometimes a good choice. Sometimes it isn't. That's always the choice of whoever is dealing with that, a conversation that a group of people can have. There are many herbs that are contraindicated with chemotherapy. And chemotherapy is about how it processes through the body, right? Like we know what it's doing. It's killing everything. It's just, killing everything in town. They're getting better, less side effects, but it's still the doctors, when they give you an IV or a pill or a shot, they're assuming it will take this long for that drug to process through your body. And you're going to have it's not, oh, I'm not going to have any side effects. I'll be fine. I'm healthy. It was like, no, you're going to have side effects. And a lot of people will say, well, I'll take these herbs to detox. The reality, and I don't want to tell you how many people I've seen who do this. Please, please, please don't detox anything in your body when you're intentionally taking poison. Like chemotherapy, and there are things you can do. There are herbs that are very safe to take with chemo. I haven't had for years. It's been over 20 years since I had a doctor say I couldn't use the herbs that I suggest. But if you're doing really bitter or sour herbs, or you're doing a lot of juicing or cleansing, you are literally pushing the chemo out, which means it's not doing any good. And I've had my share of people who've come to see me, and they were very proud to say, like, oh yeah, I did 6 months of chemotherapy. I didn't tell the doctor, but I was doing this dandelion, I was juicing and cleansing, and I didn't get any side effects. And I'm like, that's not good. That means they went through all of that for nothing because the drugs didn't do any good. And that may seem a little counterintuitive, but if you choose to do chemo, do the chemo. Support your system, make sure your blood values stay up, eat super healthy, but don't try to get rid of the thing that may save your life. And that's, you're not going to hear that from a lot of folks, but I'm like, no, if you don't get enough chemo, it doesn't work. And the same thing, if you slow the process down, then it builds up in your body and does physical harm to your body. So it is a valid option for a lot of people, and we can support that, but you need to be careful. Seizure meds are my scariest one. Literally, all these, I'm like, yeah, whatever, I got this. Seizure medications, and it's funny, seizures don't kill people unless you're driving a car. So guess what? If you have a seizure, you lose your license. I think it's 3 years. Don't quote me on that. You lose your license. Like you go to, and it's so sad. I've had people who have like a heat stroke and have a seizure from dehydration because it's hot out. And it's not that they have a seizure disorder. They just didn't drink enough water today. And they get labeled as having a seizure disorder and they'll take their license away, which just sucks. So drink water. But for folks who do have a seizure disorder, those meds have rough side effects on folks. It just like nobody likes them, but seizures are worse. So they try to find the right combination. And if we change the level of that medication in their body, they may have a seizure, they're going to lose their license. So it is probably the single most challenging one to work with. And I always go like a deep sigh every time I see that on somebody's med list. Sometimes, and I will say, we can figure out why they're having seizures. My best example we saw in the intern clinic here. Young guy came in with his girlfriend and they were like, oh yeah, I basically couldn't afford the medications. And he was like, I didn't want to take them. I don't like the way they feel. And, but I don't want to lose my license again. And I was like, how often do you get seizures? And I asked the question, are there any triggers? He goes, yeah, if I drink alcohol. Anything else? Nope. I have a great solution. Don't do that. They didn't like my answer to that. So St. John's wort, by the way, is a wonderful herb. And it is the one that you will see listed if you go to the PDR, the physician's desk reference, which is like, if you ever like, oh, I want to look this drug up, there's the patient portal and then there's doctor. You don't need any special credentials to read the doctor stuff other than there's a lot of $5 words in there. And they list everything in the doctor's portal. I always read both. There's good information in both of those. Just about every single one of those will say, don't take this with St. John's wort. And there's a level of validity of that. So when we look at the pathway of how drugs and St. John's wort goes through the liver and is processed through the body, this will either speed up or slow down or compete in the liver for stuff and change the way that drug processes through the body. So I will generically say it does interfere with 50% of medications. It does thin the blood. It's generally contraindicated if you're taking any kind of antidepressants or antipsychotics. And lots of people do it anyway. It doesn't mean everybody's going to fall out from it. It's just that it will oftentimes cause too much serotonin, which has its own issues with it and so forth. But the one that's scary, and I actually, there was a conversation with some of the nobody's home. One of the leading herbalists, a lot of the leading herbalists, and they were like, does anybody actually think that St. John's wort's an issue? And like, yeah, sure, it thins blood and serotonin sickness and light sensitivity. They're like, I was like, I do. It was one of my students. She's an acupuncturist now. She has St. John's wort tattooed on her arm. And she was like very type A, very controlled in everything she did. And was very consistent with her daily birth control pill. And she was feeling a little under the weather, a little blue. And so she was like, oh, I hear St. John's wort. And so she started taking St. John's wort. And I think it was like 2 or 3 months later, she had twins. And so without a doubt, St. John's wort may interfere with birth control. And so I'd be super careful with that one. I give St. John's wort to people quite happily. As long as they're not on any medications, and that includes over the counter or any prescriptions, I'm not going to chase the research on that. But it's a lovely herb if you have no meds. So really is generally considered safe. For any of you who are medically minded, this is why, and this is in your medical book as well. It is now a Chinese herb, even though it doesn't have a long history. You'll hear the CYP 450 pathways talked about a lot. But this also, if you look at the last bullet point there, hyperforin, and there are hypericin, there's a number of alkaloids that are unique in St. John's wort. They don't have any of the action. All the research on St. John's wort, when they pulled out a single chemical, failed miserably, has no benefits and only side effects. When they used this dirty plant with its 10,000 constituents in there that nobody even knows what half of that crap is, then it does help with mild and moderate depression. And the research pans out that it works about as well as most of the SSRIs, the antidepressant medications out there. And, consistency and all of that becomes important. So you'll find it, I'm getting ahead of myself, but when we look at research, they're usually pulling a chemical out because you can standardize and control a chemical easier than you can control a dirty plant. And so we see these issues that happen both short and long term, increasing or decreasing the absorption or excretion of stuff through, and it's so funny. I think I still have the slide. Oh yeah. I was like, you know what? I don't actually know what a CYP 450 is. If you care, I won't even pretend to read that to you. This is what it is. I still don't understand it. That's beyond my skill set, right? I work with live humans and dirty plants and pokey things. I don't work at this, subatomic light wave particle stuff. I literally, I can understand it, but I can't touch it. I need to touch stuff. So it is one of those things that when they talk about competing for places in the liver, they're talking about these different things that are breaking down constituents in either a drug or an herb. And if both of those herbs are going to the same place to get broken down, something's not getting broken down right. Is literally what they're saying with all of it. And so it is important to recognize those. I think Western medicine would prefer that they just gave us a feeding tube with our medications because plants have all of these things. Like plants have to be broken down and excreted through the liver and the stomach and all that. So it's like everything we do has a potential. And we do see that. Like they recognize we don't do grapefruit with certain medications. Yeah, food does interfere with certain drugs. And so maybe they didn't test asparagus. They haven't seen the results of that. Asparagus is probably fine. Don't even worry about it. I don't know why I left that slide in. It's for the really geeky people. It's fascinating the amount of research on this herb alone. I wish they did this depth of research on every herb we own. You don't find a lot of it. And so how it's affecting things, and this one's fascinating. When we see it's helping to remove the drug from the cell, that can be good and bad. Think about doing that at the end of your chemotherapy. When you're feeling the side effects for a year or two later, at one point, it's usually 3 months that they assume the drugs have done all they're going to do. Well, let's push it out. You could actually use St. John's wort to that. So there's lots of herbs you could use for that. But really, this can be negative or positive. So it can be pushing the drug out too fast, and the drug hasn't done its job yet, or it can help at the end of a course of treatment. So these are like those narrow therapeutic margins are like, you better know what you're doing. Do your homework. These are, you could do it, but don't do it frivolously. So use caution, use common sense. And this is where most people run into problems. And for the person who asked me about the blood pressure med she was taking, you had a really unique, way more complex reaction, but I'm pretty sure it's fenugreek. So when we look at things like, and I'm going to go through these quickly, diabetes, blood pressure, antidepressants, anti-anxieties, blood thinners, you can actually argue whether which place those, I would say all of our other blood thinners that aren't warfarin, your diuretics. It's so common for somebody to say, like, I'm on, I'm injecting insulin, I'm on metformin, and what herbs have you got for diabetes? And I'm like, so here's the thing, high blood sugar will kill you, right? Not even a question. Horrible damage over short and long term happening to your body. Low blood sugar will kill you too. So if your blood sugar is being controlled through diet, lifestyle, and medication, and you throw an herb like bitter melon, which by the way is just starting to sprout now, so go check your yard and park Surrocy for anybody from the islands. But if you start taking bitter melon and your blood sugar is being controlled, it will drop your blood sugar, and then you'll pass out, break a hip, and die. So if we're going to look at any of these, and the same exact words for blood pressure, um, if you're taking an herb that does the same thing as your drug, it will be a multiplying effect and potentially low blood pressure. You'll get dizzy and pass out, right? Um, the antidepressants, you actually have a buildup of certain hormones in your body. Anti-anxieties, it will actually sedate you with that. Diuretics, probably won't die, but you're stressing out your kidneys and you're not sleeping because you're peeing all day. So I like blood pressure. It's my favorite example. Blood pressure, obviously high blood pressure, bad, heart attack, stroke, yucky things, damage. Um, and most people don't get a lot of side effects from blood pressure meds. If you're like, oh, I was hitting 160 a little too often, it needs to be below 140, and they put you on a blood pressure med, maybe they throw a diuretic in there, you good, honestly. It's the dudes who complain the most. Erectile dysfunction, right? The more dosage of that blood pressure med, the less their junk works. And so they're the ones who are always looking for something to replace that, not to normalize their blood pressure, because usually you can do that with diet and exercise if you're able to. But like, how can I still have normal erectile function and maintain a healthy blood pressure? And so what I always say, it's like at the lowest therapeutic dosage of of most of these medications, there aren't a lot of. We all laugh at the commercials where this drug can cause, death, dismemberment, blood coming out of every orifice. Most people don't get those, right? That's like 5% of the people on a bad drug, right? And they're only getting that when you're taking the higher dosages. So those can happen. They're warning you, but if you're like, oh, your blood pressure is going up, let's just put you on the lowest dosage once a day. Your junk's going to work. Your blood pressure will be fine. You're not stressing out your heart and all the other things in your body. And so we think of this, oh, don't take bitter melon with your metformin. But the reality is, no, you can't. If you monitor your blood sugar, you work with your doctor to give you the lowest therapeutic dosage of your medication, and you're consistent with your herbs. And so often people don't do that. We have to think of, and in Chinese medicine, all my teachers were PhDs from China. And so they were doctor MDs as well as acupuncture herbal folks. And so they were like, in China, we call those herbs drugs. And we can do wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We use them like drugs. And people ask for them to say, what do you got for, right? I can't sleep. What do you got for sleep? You can go to your doctor and get a sleep med. Not a fan of those. But, and so we're not saying, ooh, what's my imbalance? Why am I not sleeping? What can I do in my life in order to get better sleep? And so sometimes it's not an herb. It's like, well, I do have a cup of coffee before I go to bed. Maybe that's why you're not sleeping. Maybe we should find a replacement for that. Maybe it's because your husband snores, in which case I don't have an herb for that. Not for her. Maybe you need a new mattress. Maybe your hip hurts. And so you need an herb for your hip. And so it's so important that we stop thinking of what do you got for and thinking about why you got it. And then we can start to make recommendations and put herbs together. And if you have blood pressure, blood sugar, whatever, those medications are saving your life. And so we can change diet and lifestyle, because that's number one. Slowly decrease the medication whilst we slowly increase the herb. The hope is that you're recording your blood sugar readings or your blood pressure readings. You take that to your doctor. You can stop whilst continuing to monitor it. You continue to make lifestyle changes. And then at some point you stop taking the herbs. We don't have an herb deficiency. In the same way, we don't have a metformin deficiency. We're not being kind to our pancreas. That's why we have it. So we have to start thinking about the herbs differently. And so, herbs to use with caution. They can be good or bad, depending on how and why we're using it. If you're not on an antidepressant, you're like, I just feel a little out of the weather. Like a little depression's normal. If your dog dies, you're supposed to be depressed, right? Like that's called you have a soul. Uh, and so do you need to go on antidepressants for the next 3 years? No. But some St. John's wort wouldn't be wrong. Some rose wouldn't be wrong. There's a bunch of things. Mimosa, I love mimosa, but no mimosa if you have bipolar disorder. In case you didn't know that, mimosa, Kifon Peak, Kifon Paw, the tree of happiness, lots of names, specifically contraindicated in bipolar 2. There are a couple of herbs like that. And so it's tough because it's like psychiatry is an iffy profession. Like, all right, you got bipolar. Is that bipolar 1? Is there a little bipolar 2? There's a bunch of other versions of it. Is it a mix of two things? Like, so I'm like, I generally encourage people to stay away from those that even if, we're not positive of mental health diagnosis, like, there's lots of other good herbs you can use. Diuretics, the way I usually use it, we can use herbs as really potent and safe diuretics, without a doubt. Everything from corn silk to cool Chinese herbs to dandelion, water plantain. The list is endless of good things for that. So sometimes if somebody's like, nurses are on their feet all the time. Nurses and teachers always got swollen ankles, right? This is so sad. Teachers are worse. They don't get pee breaks. Like, I need to pee, I'm gonna go pee, right? I'll come back in a few minutes. Nurses are the teachers are like, yeah, I don't have a break for another 3 hours. So what do? They don't drink enough water, which is horrible. The number one way to stop kidney disease, drink water. Up until about the time you're about to start dialysis, that is the main treatment is drink water and a healthy blood pressure. And so in that early stage, you can just use the herbs. Honestly, my number one treatment for mild edema is celery. Yeah, you can get celery seeds. I'll make more money if you buy it from me that way. Literally, go buy some celery in the store, and 3 stalks of celery a day is a mild potassium-sparing diuretic. It's also a good source of fiber. Don't put the cream cheese in there. It's probably not going to put it. And so sometimes they're like, okay, nope, that wasn't enough. I didn't do the things I need to. I'm on a mild diuretic. And I will say, I don't often try to second guess doctors on stuff, but they still do this one thing with diuretics. There was one study that came out like 20 years ago that said if you give a diuretic at night, it will decrease by 0.5% some weird lung disease. I don't even remember what the hell it was. One study, and usually we need multiple studies that are repeated in different universities or countries and so forth. So one study. And so all of the doctors were prescribing the stupid diuretic, one of the most common ones, at night. So guess what? Everybody was waking up all night long to pee. And so literally, like, you were sleeping fine. Now you're getting up 5 times a night to pee. And they're exhausted and they're like, they're coming to see me. And I was like, you take this at night? And that could be an important question. They're like, yeah, my doctor said so. I was like, ask your doctor if you can take it in the morning. And all of a sudden they sleep fine. That was all I needed to do to fix their sleep. And every single doctor said, yeah, sure, whatever. Okay. So I literally, like, every single patient's on a diuretic. I was like, when do you take it? Talk to your doctor. I also, if somebody's like on this low dose, it's doing okay, but it's like, the ankle swelling's getting there. I'm not doing what you told me to. I'll put them on celery or one of these other diuretics in addition to their med, because otherwise they're going to up their dosage. They're going to say, take it twice a day. And so we can use these herbs to take up the slack that the drug's not doing, so we don't have to go up to that higher dosage. And they work well together. They're not contraindicated. So sometimes we can do an herb and a drug for the same thing with get great results. Celery is my favorite food to recommend for people dealing with that stuff. So it's really such a simple thing. All right, I know that sounds very Chinese, but the Guanfangji versus the Hanfangji. Whatever, nobody cares. There's a couple of problems with this. When we're using, yeah. Yes. I think I got a slide coming up. And if I haven't hit it in a few minutes, hassle me again. It'll help some see the slide. But that is a great question about steroids. Because I have a thing I recommend usually for that. So some of these are very real issues. Because if we use common names and not Latin names, and whether we're talking Ayurvedic herbs, we're talking Chinese herbs, or something like snake root, 5 different plants called snake root, one of which is poison. I got in an argument with Corey Pine Shane and Phyllis Light. They're online arguing with each other, emailing back and forth, because there's 3 different plants called sarsaparilla. So smilax out here, tufuling, called sarsaparilla. Sassafras, sarsaparilla. There's some plant I never heard of in Alabama called sarsaparilla that I still don't know what it is. It's an Aurelia something or another. And so it's like people from different regions would identify it. So when it's put on a bottle or you're ordering an herb, if there isn't a Latin name, a Latin binomial, genus and species, you're not really sure what you're getting. And they're not required by law to put the genus and species on a bottle. I will say the more reputable companies do. And so if you're buying off the internet, I always like, show me the label. You got to look at that. The Mutong, there's a Chuan Mutong and a Guan Mutong. There's like 7 people who died in Belgium. They bought the wrong one. And it was supposed to be a diuretic in a weight loss clinic. And some idiot just ordered it, and it's never used by itself, but they did. They got the wrong one. It caused kidney failure and a couple of deaths 30 years ago or something. You will find on the list of dangerous plants, plantain, and this is getting a little ahead of myself. Plantain, not the banana, but the weed that's grown out here. It's literally goes all over the world. Phenomenal herb. When it's very young, it's hard to identify, especially if you suck as a botanist. So somebody who was a wild crafter picking herbs, and wild crafting herbs are great. This was not a good wild crafter. And he harvested probably 100 pounds of germander, which is toxic. And it got into the nation's herb supply through the wild harvesting. And so this happened in the mid 70s. You still see plantain listed as a dangerous herb, even though it's well known. There's been no reports of that since then. Now we have better testing and things like that. Kava kava, that's I won't go off on crazy tangents too much, but St. Pete, if you don't know it, has more kava bars than anywhere other than probably the South Pacific where it comes from. In the 60s and 70s, when herbs kind of had the resurgence and popularity and things like that, kava was one of those herbs that was one of the leading sales because it's great for anxiety, right? It does lots of other things, but anxiety is the main reason people use kava. And it's pretty good at that. Generally safe. I was like, don't drink alcohol with kava. They both in large doses can adversely affect. So if you're excessively drinking and you're slamming back 4 or 5 kavas every day and washing it down with some whiskey, you're going to have a problem with time. So I do keep those 2 apart as much as possible. But what happened, and this goes back to, it's a multi-billion-dollar industry. If you're buying ground up kava, it's just a powder, which is the way most places sell it. You don't know what that is. So you only use the roots of the kava kava plant, the Piper methysticum. And so the aerial parts have a cavalactone, whatever, an alkaloid in there that causes liver damage. And so the shadier companies were like, we're not using 20 feet of this kava plant. Well, let's dry it, throw them all in there together, because we didn't have good testing back in the day. They would also, a lot of the problems with kava kava were alcohol. The water is my favorite extractor. Make tea, right? Very simple. Alcohol is a decent extractor. That's why we use like vodka, 100 proof vodka. So it's half water and half vodka, and that's a preservative. So yay. There's other things, glycerin, if we can't use alcohol for some reason. I hate the taste of it, but whatever. It's my issue. But the really good extractor of the chemicals out of a plant, acetone. It's amazing. In case you didn't notice, that's what you paint remover, fingernail polish remover, has all these liver toxicity, cancer warnings all over it. So they would use acetone to get this super duper multi whatever, and then they would use good chemistry to try to pull all of that out and put a different preservative in. They didn't do a very good job sometimes. And so we saw some issues again back in the 70s where it got banned in a bunch of countries. It's still banned in some countries. Everything's illegal in Alabama, by the way. For real. Damiana is illegal. I think it's in Alabama, one of our lovely southern states here. But what they did is the British Herbal Society said, like, this plant's been used for 10,000 years. Show us the proof. And what they found was of the, I think it was 46 different instances of adverse events with kava kava. And we see this a lot with a lot of different herbs, but it's my favorite example. Frequently, it was like, oh, we reported that 2 or 3 times. So it was one adverse event re-reported and they just kept counting it. And we're like, okay, so now it's down to whatever number. Then somebody was on like 20 medications, half of which would have caused the liver damage, the elevated liver enzymes that they were calling an adverse event. And so they were like, yeah, I don't think you can blame that on the herb. It could be any one of these substances. And some people were doing like 5, 10 times the amount recommended on the bottle. And they were getting some issues. And when they stopped taking it, everything went back to normal. We're like, all right, don't take 10 times the recommended amount of any herb. At some point, water will kill you, right? You can drown from drinking too much water. And they found some adulteration where people were throwing the aerial parts of the plant in there, and that was causing problems. The acetone was causing problems. My favorite one was there was a single death reported to kava kava. And what it was a car accident. They found a bottle of kava kava in the seat next to them. And they said, oh, it's a kava-related death because the bottle was in there. In which case, McDonald's, Ronnie should be in jail because how many McDonald's French fries have they found in the scene of a car accident or you were drinking a milkshake, right? And so we're about to see another case of that. It's really important that we go and look at the specific cases. And I hate to say it, I spend a lot of my time doing that because I was like, that's scary. If it's true, I need to go back to the original research. And you're going to hear me say that. And by the way, in the age of the internet, 80-90% of everything you read on Facebook and God knows what all the other is total bullshit or just misconstrued from all points of view. Got to go back to the original research. Don't believe anything. And now with AI, it's worse. They're just inventing things that never happen. So quality control is important. Labeling is important. That goes back to our both our good manufacturing practices as well as the DSHEA. And DSHEA says what should be on the label. There should be an expiration date. There should be a caution. There should be somebody to call. The FDA statement says this is not used to treat and diagnose. It should be in English, ideally Latin. It should have dosing instructions on there. All of that should be on there. It can also not make a medical claim. So if it's Snuffy Smith's elixir of eternal life, I don't know if that's illegal or not, but my best example, any of y'all, I just assume all of you all are doing herbs and stuff. So anybody ever go to the health food store and buy ACF? It's by Buried Treasure, really good formula. So I go to the health food stores, I go to Rolling Oats and Earth Origins here, and I paw through their aisles because I want to see what's popular. Honestly, it's like it's always gonna be right at eye level. And it's really like, oh, I don't know this company. And I'll just check them out and see whether I like them or not. So it was cold and flu season. This was 15 plus years ago. And I was like, ooh, it was a liquid supplement that was called acute cold and flu formula. I was like, okay. I think we can all guess what that supplement was for, right? That's a medical claim. And so the FDA gave them a cease and desist. It took them about 5 years to go after them. And they were like, oh, you're making a medical claim. You've got 10 days to cease and desist. So they did a recall or they sent out labeling. And so they changed the name to ACF. So the cool kids, we all know what that means. Acute cold and flu formula. If your supplement is making a blatant claim for miracle weight loss supplement, it's breaking the law in the labeling and it's not even close. lots of companies do, start to question it. They're breaking the law on the label, and so many good companies do. But look a little harder. Break open the capsule and taste it. And I'm getting ahead of myself, but ideally, I know there's a bunch of gibberish on the bottom there. There are two things that I like to see from my supplier, whether they're bulk herbs like the ones out there or pre-made supplements. One is some sort of testing, chromatography, and there's different types of chromatography, and you guys can read that. But if you ever watched, NCIS with Abby, and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to put it in the mass spec, and we're going to find, oh, the blue ring octopus bit it, and that's how the guy died," right? That's what she's doing. She's doing chromatography, and it's all these little peaks and valleys, and it's like, look, that poison, that's the sign of that poison. So we can ensure that our herb is that, right? So it's not something other than that. The other thing is a certificate of analysis. And all the cool kids, we call it C of A. And there's different levels of certificate of analysis. The bare minimum is to make sure there's no poop or mold fungus on there. And that it is the herb it says. It's a simpler version of that. You can do further testing for pesticides, heavy metals, and things like that. And so the best things, and like the company, I periodically, like I work with the same, 5, 10 companies. I send it out for like testing. You can send it out to independent labs on your own. This is my favorite way to test because y'all ain't sending shit out to labs. So the FDA accepts the cool name organoleptic testing is smells like, tastes like, must be. All y'all with no training whatsoever could tell me whether I opened a jar of mint, whether that was good mint or bad mint. You know what it smells like. You've had a cup of mint tea. And so the reality is our ability to tell whether an herb is decent or not, regardless of how it tests, because I can falsify records. I can, if the marker compound is berberine, because that's super popular now, and I'm selling you golden seal, but it's all powdered up, I can pull it out of a crappy plant and crank out what looks like this is the best golden seal, which sells for about $1 a gram. I can make it look really good, and it's actual total crap because I adulterated it with another plant. So easy to do. I don't even have to think on that. So smelling, looking, tasting, and that means the more whole your herb is, the more like if you grind up chamomile, you don't know what that is. Hopefully it smells like chamomile, but if I see chamomile flowers, I know what it is. I can see what that looks like. So start to become a discriminating connoisseur of your herbs. And this is where it gets weird. Open your capsules. I always tell all my clients, I'm like, bring your shit in with you. I don't care if you're bringing a suitcase and a shopping cart, bring all of the stuff in because I don't know every company. Like, yeah, sure, I got my dozen or so very common ones. I'm like, yeah, they're fine. But there are so many companies now on the internet, or people are getting from a flea market or something like that. And so the label, like, oh, good, they did a good job of labeling. Usually not. But I'm like, can I open one up? I'll open up a capsule and put it in my hand and I'll taste it. Like, you'll know real fast. And some of my favorites, saw palmetto, great herb, Florida native. It tastes like shit. It is nasty. And so if somebody's like, oh, I'm taking this for my prostate, that's not the only thing it's also used for PCOS, by the way, polycystic ovarian syndrome. So if you take it and you lick that saw palmetto that's in the capsule and you go like, oh my God, that's the most disgusting thing. It tastes like rotten soap, whatever the hell that tastes like. You got a good product. If you lick it and you're like, meh, I don't know what's in there then. It should taste like the herb. My favorite one, I brought in hawthorn, or no, excuse me, it was golden seal. It was like a golden seal echinacea blend, and it was like, oh, it'll cure everything. I'll never get sick. And I'm like, I didn't know the company, so I dumped it out. And golden seal was in big letters on the bottle. And golden seal is nasty. It's very high in berberine. It's one of the highest sources of berberine, super bitter. And so I'm like, I dump it in my hand. I'm like, and I taste it. I'm like, and sometimes it's a delay, it's dried or it's concentrated. They're like, there's only, I'll give it a minute. I was like, that ain't right. I got nothing. So I put my glasses on. I read the bottle carefully. It had golden seal in huge letters. Microscopic, it was either microscopic print under it or on the back. Golden seal leaf, no berberine in that. Not classically used. And so plant part matters. And so they were thinking they were doing this good job, trying to take this, and they were like, and no general public person on the planet knows that it has to be the root and not the leaf. Only freaks like me know this. Now, but that shouldn't have cost a lot of money, right? Golden seal, super expensive. Leaf, debris. Hops is another one that's frequently adulterated. Who likes a hoppy beer? Oh, come on, don't lie. No, y'all do. I don't drink, so. So hops, beautiful plant, doesn't grow in Florida or maybe North Florida. They now have a few. So it's actually the pollen inside the bracts that are used. 80% of the hops industry goes to the beer industry. And so they buy up 80% of the crop, they dry it and they put it through these shakers that knock all the pollen out. And that's really bitter, it gives you all of that. And then they're good people, so they just compost 80% of that, right? Not if I can sell it to the herb industry. So we remove the active ingredient, basically give the leftover debris. You grind it up and put it in a capsule and sell it for hops. It's great for digestion and sleep and stress and all kinds of good stuff. Bullshit. So many of our herbs, they should be bitter. We lack bitter in our diet. If you go and say the most powerful herbs, they're all bitter as hell because we only know two flavors, sweet and salty. We need more sour and bitter in our lives. So I'm a fan of research. I mean, like I was like energetics, backed up with good science. There's a new, somebody just pitched to you like, we're looking for 100 investors into our new bullshit. And I was just like, delete. And, and the reality is I was like, I want 500 years of history, right? As a minimum, like indigenous people have done this for eternity. I was like, I'm good with that. Or double-blind placebo-controlled studies, the gold standard of research. But you can't just make shit up. Like, and most of the products being sold, they're just making shit up, right? And so I need one or the other. Love it when I see both. I like to see a historical use of a plant, and then I can go find some research on it, and there usually is. There is almost no human studies in herbs, and those that have been done are done badly. Most of our research is in vitro, which means we just put some tissue cells and we squirt some juice on it and we watch what happens. It has no bearing on what will happen in a human. There is some research done on animal studies. Just gonna forget the ethics of that for a minute. All of you look pretty humanoid to me. And did anybody ever try to feed a capsule to a mouse? Yeah. They're not very cooperative. They're lovely, but they're not cooperative. So what do? They inject it. All right, who's shooting up herbs in here? Don't lie. The reality, most of us take it by mouth, right? PO. And when we eat something, we're chewing it up or swallowing it. It goes into our stomach, and stomach acids do stomach acid things to it, and it's absorbed slowly through our system, processed through our liver, eliminated through poo or pee. When we inject things, either in the vein or into the muscle, it bypasses the stomach acid and processes through our body. So when we inject something, we oftentimes will get different results than we do when we eat it. And so our animal studies are potentially a problem. So if you go like, nah, that sounds like bullshit, I'm going to take a look at that. Make sure you're looking at, is it a human study, an animal study, and test tube study? In vitro is the lowest standard. Well, okay, speculative is the lowest standard. And a lot of the herbal stuff is speculative. We're like, well, those crazy Chinese herbalists say that it moves the blood, so we just assume it thins the blood. And that's just wrong. I'll give you a really bad example of, there was a gentleman it was the echinacea study, it was like 15, 20 years ago. And he was like, I want to prove echinacea works. It's great for colds and flu. He was very pro herb and he was a scientist. So he got a bunch of other scientists together. I don't know how he screwed this up that bad, but so he got like $1 million from the NIH. He said we're going to get like 500 college students and infect them with influenza. Nice guy. And we're going to give them 3 times a day. We're going to give them echinacea, and for half of them, and the other half we're going to give them a placebo. But they couldn't find a placebo that was nasty enough to do that. So they found the closest thing to echinacea was Jägermeister. So I don't know if y'all know Jägermeister, but there's, is it like 54, 56 herbs, all of which are active. And Jägermeister was originally designed for the plague. So it's specifically antimicrobial. And so they were using a biologically active placebo. And so they couldn't figure out why they were like, sometimes the Jägermeister even worked better. So do more Jaeger. No, there was another minor mistake they made. It was a subclinical dosage, and they didn't give it with the frequency or dosage that was considered relevant. And so here's a shocker. How many medications would work if you cut the minimum clinical dosage in half and didn't give it with the frequency that was supposed to be done? Clearly it would fail. They had no herbalists on their research committee. They only had pharmacists and doctors who are super smart people. They don't know anything about herbs. And so it was like this guy actually presented his research at the Medicines of the Earth conference up in North Carolina to 500 rabid herbalists who, when they put the mics out and you line up, they were just like sitting there with baseball bats. And it's such a nice guy and did a really good thing, except that he totally screwed it up. And at the end, he literally apologized when we explained to him how badly he had screwed it up. He was like, I'm horrified. And so headlines everywhere said echinacea doesn't work. His retraction that came out about 2 months later, back page microscopic print. And NIH would not give him more funding to redo the study. So whenever I'm looking for stuff that is about herb-drug interactions, when I'm looking at research, I'm doing it right up time. Look to see that there's an herbalist, a naturopath, an acupuncturist, somebody who knows what they're talking about and not just a scientist. We need a scientist on there too, because I don't know my P450s. But there needs to be somebody there saying, this is the right way to look at this herb. This is the right way to extract this herb and so forth. All right, I just went into that babble. Sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Meta studies, it seems like most of the research is meta studies. Meta studies seem like a good idea, except the researchers have a hypothesis. Herbs good, herbs bad. That's going to be one of their hypotheses. They then set up their parameters, if they're less than perfect, to support their hypothesis. Like we have half the doctors say acupuncture is bullshit. There's 100 million patients that say maybe not, and research in other countries that supports its use. The military supports its use. The World Health Organization supports its use. And I don't have that statistic on here. I think it's still 70% of the world's first line of medical care is herbs. We're so lucky in the US. We got a doctor on every corner, a hospital in every town. That is not normal. That is truly unique to first world countries. And so for most of South America and Central America, half of Mexico, for half of Asia, for most of Africa, herbs are their primary healthcare. And so there's research in all of those places that show that it works. It's not acceptable in the US unless it's against herbs, in which case we'll put it on the headline.
Mhm.
And so there's some real issues both with meta studies of how those parameters are set, but also on how things are being reported. And I'm going to go fast because I've only got like 20 minutes left. Consumer Reports, great. They hate herbs. They literally have a horrible, horrible bias, and I don't know why. But they have repeatedly done just wrong shit. To include Chinese herbs that are very safe, very normal, regularly used. And they're still saying plantain is dangerous. This was the deadly dose kratom. There's pros and cons, but like that was so biased going into that and so badly reported. In Germany, where kava is still banned, was just as bad as our kratom story here. And again, thousands of years of good history. Does that mean there aren't contraindications with it? Of course there are. The biggest contraindication, and the Times failed so badly on this because I think very highly of Tampa Bay Times. I like it better when I say P Times, but whatever. They tried to do a good joke, but it was, as far as I'm concerned, and they did a couple of radio shows. I called and wrote my frustration. They were not separating the isolated chemicals from the whole plant. And so, and I'm biased. I drink kratom. Sorry, I don't like kava. I like my stimulants, but I drink coffee. A scheduled drug, by the way. Caffeine is a scheduled drug. So we're all drug users here. Don't drink tea. But the reality is, in South America, coca leaves are sold in the grocery stores as tea. Everybody chews coca leaves at altitude. Cocaine, I hear, is not that good for you, and extracted alkaloid. Opium poppy. My mother, I remember this as a little kid. I was like, oh, don't trust your children, by the way. Went through the medicine cabinet. It's like, what's this pretty bottle? It was tincture of opium. Mother was not a heroin addict. She had a case of diarrhea. And guess what? Opium flowers are great for chronic loose stool. They're constipating. So she used it a couple of times, resolved the issue because Imodium hadn't been invented yet, which is a synthetic opioid-like drug, by the way, that heroin users will use that if they can't get street drugs. If you're in recovery for whatever reason, watch out for Imodium. It can trigger relapse. I've actually seen a few cases of that now. But so that plant, super safe. Doctor prescribed it back in the 60s. Heroin, not so great for it, right? So really important that we see there is a difference between a plant and an isolated chemical that's concentrated to do either good or bad stuff. Sorry, kratom rant. They beat up on 2 alkaloids. There are many active ingredients in there. And this was the most recent one other than kratom. This happened 3 years ago. A white mulberry leaf killed this senator's wife. Why? Because she was found with a piece of white mulberry leaf this big in her stomach. Again, Ronnie McDonald's going to jail. And there is no adverse events for the last 100 years reported on mulberry. It's used in every culture that has mulberry trees growing. It is generally considered safe by everyone. This coroner, for some reason, thought it was okay to put this information out. And the reality is everybody came back from the mainstream medicine to everybody in the herb industries that went, you're high. Like, and it was in every headline, every news show was talking about how dangerous herbs were because they found a corner of a leaf in somebody who had a variety of health issues. And that is yellow journalism at its worst. Like, should we be doing bad stuff? No. You know, there are so many herbs we could argue about its pros and cons. But if we're jump on every single herb and just malign herbs as an industry, all of a sudden nobody's listening. Yay, that's lots of people saying you're stupid. I wanted to get to the last one. Yes. And this is so common. I click on everything. So this doctor, cardiologist, yay, good for her. Children are not children, the 20-somethings are dying is basically what she's. They're showing up in the ER. Oh my God. And she's blaming herbs. So bitter orange. Anybody like burger? What's the bergamot tea,
Earl
the
Grey.
Earl Grey, yeah. So that's bitter orange. So we've been drinking it for a couple of hundred years. It's when we isolate the stimulant light alkaloid out of it that it becomes an issue. Doesn't happen much. Ephedra, cool Chinese herb called ma huang, is illegal to put in anything. So any company doing that is breaking a federal law. Clearly, California has some issues because if her patients, and this is within the last 3 years, this came out. But I'm going to skip to the good stuff. Blah, 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 blah. Somewhere in here, it talks about, oh, I did underline some of the stuff. A, does not closely regulate the $1.5 trillion wellness industry. Yes, it does. And wellness industry, does that mean massage therapists or does that mean herbs? Is that the exercise crowd? I don't know. Lots of people taking stuff. So this is where I think it got interesting. Tweeting out to her 70,000 followers. So you mean she has a vested financial interest to sensationalize something? Like, why did they mention that? And it's like, I'm such an asshole because I'm like, now I don't trust you. Like, if you're just a doctor in an ER who's like, I had 15 cases come through this month of people who were doing ephedra. There is an ephedra epidemic in California. I'd be like, somebody needs to find out who's importing this illegal product. But now she's like, I tweeted this out so people would click on it. I didn't. So, blah, 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 natural is dangerous or evil. Now she's throwing in, showed up in the hospital with serious health problems from taking vitamins, herbals, and hormone supplements. Who prescribes hormone supplements? Doctors. So like that's a real so people are dying from one-a-days. Like which vitamins, that's such a broad category. There was the one case of ashwagandha that was now listed in a few places I see as dangerous. Any of you, I know some of you do, because some of you are in my classes. Ashwagandha is a nightshade. And for anybody who has a nightshade sensitivities, i.e. potatoes, tomatoes, eggplants, peppers, where that makes you have issues, you will also have a reaction to ashwagandha, very likely. And that can go from mild to severe. And ashwagandha is in frickin' everything. It drives me nuts in all the sleep formulas, all the stress formulas, all the adrenal formulas. Everybody's throwing ashwagandha because it's the most popular thing in town. I recommend ashwagandha maybe once a year. Like it's one of my lesser used things. It's just, it has a good marketing campaign going. So basically what she found was the ephedra and ephedrine compounds that were banned in 2004. Thank you. So what they are really referring to when I looked more into this and I clicked on every link that they had was it was caffeine. It was caffeine and alcohol or all the monster drinks. That's what's affecting all these folks. And they sometimes throw in something like an amino acid or an herb into the supercharged monster drinks that there's high school kids drinking 4 and 5 of those. Yeah, they're showing up in the ER with horrible arrhythmias. That's like literally doing a massive shot of cocaine or something. Like no one should drink that. When I was a kid, it was Vivarin. The little yellow tablets were 200 milligrams. There's that much of caffeine in most of those monster drinks, and they're drinking those like water. So I know Vivarin would give me heart palpitations when I was a kid. All right, we'll get to the good stuff. Number one, quality control. You gotta know what's in your supplements that you're taking, and you need to know that what's on the label is correct. So find those few companies that you trust. There are many. Like, yay, I like the companies. I literally like Gaia Herbs. I carry a few of their products. They sell them in the health food stores too. I've been to their farm and their factory. Like, I feel pretty safe with those guys. Legendary Herbs, one of the Chinese, the granules, they literally have like Google Maps where you can look at where the herbs are growing with aerial views and make sure there's not some creepy factory going on. I was like, I appreciate that kind of effort. Asking for those C of A's, smelling, tasting your herbs. Takes herb classes, doesn't have to be me, but learn about the herbs that you're taking because everything you're taking, if you're taking it at a therapeutic dosing, has pros and cons. Magnesium's great, one of the biggest deficiencies. It will also make you poop your guts out. So, like, which form of magnesium? What's the right dosage? When should I take it? Like, that's not on the bottle. And so an AI will kill you. Don't trust it. So go talk to a human. Um, know your herbs, and this is more for the practitioners here. Things with aristolochic alkaloids and the pilocytic alkaloids. Both of those cause frequently permanent damage, and they are sometimes in Chinese medica and Ayurvedic medicine, those are in normal use. And you need to like start to research like, no, I need to know my toxic herbs before I learn all my not toxic herbs. Um, I don't care what system of evaluation you use, make sure it's right. Whether your doctor's getting it right, whether they're going in depth, whether they're doing the right blood work, doing the right medications, like that's important. And I know they hate you for Googling, but you're allowed to get second opinions. And so go to another practitioner, another doctor, get a second opinion. If you're a practitioner, make sure you're getting it right. Make sure all their signs and symptoms match up. I'm a fan of energetics of like, do you run hot or cold? Do you tend to be wet or dry? Are you pooping and peeing? Are you eating and drinking? Looking at some really basic ideas of if we're using those, like always go back. If I don't get progress in 3 sessions with somebody, I start all over. I expect something to change. Like if I'm doing stuff and you're doing stuff, um, then something should get a little better. And if it's not, then I did something wrong. I missed something. I won't say I did something wrong. I missed a sign or a symptom. I didn't ask the right question. I didn't elicit the right information. We didn't ask for the right blood work. Um, if you're doing an herb and a drug for the same thing, please make sure that you're accounting for your herb's work. It will lower your blood pressure. It will lower your blood sugar. It will make you more tired. And so adjust your medications appropriately and monitor. Check your blood pressure every day. Check your blood sugar constantly. I love the 24-hour, I forget what they're called now. Those things are cool as hell. I want to get one. One of our practitioners here does not have diabetes or blood sugar issues. She put it on to see what foods are inflammatory for her. And so she said, oatmeal, really good for you. No, it was spiking her blood sugar and holding it there for hours. And she was like, holy crap. And so she's finding those foods that are irritating her body just by putting on one of those constant glucose monitors.
What is,
I hate to say you can buy them on Amazon. I have not done it yet, but it's a constant glucose monitor is what it's called. The doctors can prescribe it for diabetics, but like you can literally go on Amazon and buy one, and it does break the skin, I think. So you just put it in your arm, it stays for a couple of weeks, and it will all the data will go to your phone. So it's super cool. So need to do that. Again, for practitioners, and not just make sure you're dosing appropriately, adjusting for the individual that you're working with. Little kids don't get the same dosage as adults. And pregnancy is probably the scariest contraindication. So, and again, this goes to the practitioners. Just because they weren't pregnant when they came in the first time, if they're still a menstruating woman, they could be pregnant now. And so I think it's important to always ask that question, and don't make assumptions, especially if they're not on birth control. If somebody's not actively on birth control or using condoms or rhythm or whatever, I always ask like, any chance? Because I'm not giving you that herb otherwise, and so I don't want to be responsible for that. The other thing that can be really helpful, the more you separate your herbs from your drugs, the better. I try for 4 hours, but like that's some people are taking 3 times a day. They're doing a prescription medication. They're like, hey, you do the best you can. If you're like, oh, I had to take my prescription meds before a meal, well, then take your supplements after a meal. Like the more you don't have them all in your belly at the same time. That means they're not all processing through your liver at the same time. So the more you separate them, the better off you are, the less likely you are to have an adverse reaction. And this sounds mean. So often the folks who come to this class are like anti-doctor. They're your friend. And if they're not, get a different doctor. Like for real, you're putting your life in their hands in the same way you're putting your life in the hands of an herbalist or an acupuncturist. So you should be able to be honest with them and demand, like if I have a plumber who isn't doing what I'm asking, I'm going to fire the plumber. I'm a plumber and so is the doctor. And so try to like explain to somebody like, hey, this is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to lower my medications while I make some lifestyle changes. I'd like to run these tests more frequently. I'm going to track it on my end. Can you work with me on that? If they're like, you're high, herbs are dangerous and bad and they're evil. It's like, bye-bye. Fire them and please tell them why you fired them. And go hire a new plumber. Like it's so important. And so they should be collaborating with you on what you're choosing to do. They don't have to agree with it. Like, I'm okay with it. Like, I don't think that's a good choice, but I'll support you through that. And let's set a 3-month time limit. If you're not able to safely reduce it and maintain a proper blood sugar, blood pressure, I want you to go back. I say that's a valid negotiation. Like, I don't fault the doctor for saying that. For those of you who work within Ayurvedic or Chinese where there's classical formulas, stay close to those. The more medications somebody's on, the more you should stay right on the classical formulations. And that is it's Western herbalists have to work twice as hard as everybody else. They're kind of creating their formulas on their own. It's kind of a pain in the ass. It's fun because woohoo, it's a wide open thing. The Chinese and Ayurvedic herbalists, they just open the book. They're like, there's the formula for that pattern. Okay, cool. We'll change those, but like you're on 10 medications, I'm like, nope, you take that pill just the way it is, right out of the book, and then we'll see what happens. That tends to work better. No matter what system you work under a system. What you got for is not a system. Got to evaluate. If you get a boo-boo on your arm, yeah, you're like, what do you got for a boo-boo? That's okay. But most people literally are not coming in here because they got a bug bite. They're coming in here with chronic disease. People are dissatisfied or not getting the care that they want for these complex, hard to define disorders that the really smart doctors are not able to figure out. And not doing, like, that's not a Google answer. That's a come see somebody for that stuff. And so work within a system for it. And please do blood work. Vitamin D. Everybody needs vitamin D. Unless you don't. And so you can take too much vitamin D. If you all saw the news report on that, it was right before or during COVID, somebody in England, all of a sudden they started putting all these cautions on vitamin D. One case in a million years, she was taking, it was 230,000 IUs of vitamin D daily. That was being recommended by an herbalist with a bunch of other stuff that she was taking horrible toxic amounts of stuff. And she spent a week in the hospital, was fine, but she was near death. She stopped taking it, she was fine. So it is important, like, nope, use some common sense with that. Monitor with blood work. Things should get better whilst we're doing things. Oh, positive stuff. Right. We got time. I know. The end isn't, oh shit. All right, I'm gonna run there. But we talked a little bit about positive herb drug interactions, doing the same for stuff. There's also counteracting side effects. Statin drugs. I'm not a big fan, but if you're going to take those cholesterol meds, if you're going to take a cholesterol med, please take CoQ10 with it. Yay, cholesterol meds do lower your cholesterol. There's a lot of other debates about that. I'll spare you all the rants. But CoQ10 will prevent some of the damage that does. So I'm a big fan of that as a supplement. Using kratom to get off of opiates, if you were addicted to opiates, you'll probably end up addicted to kratom, but you don't go to jail for kratom unless you're in Sarasota. It's illegal. We talked about reducing dosage or eliminating side effects. We all know if you're taking an antibiotic, like some antibiotics will save your life, right? You get an infection, you need antibiotics. Please take probiotics with it. And then continue to take probiotics for at least a month afterwards. You can go further. Um, I'm going to rant a little bit about this one. So antibiotic resistance is a real issue in our world. It is 50% of our antibiotics go into the feed supply for our animals and from like birth to harvest. And so we're eating these animals that have a lot of it, and if we're either not finishing our own prescription or doctors, and they've gotten way better lately. It used to be like, I don't feel good, here's an antibiotic. They've kind of stopped doing that. And I'm happy they're like, you have a viral disorder. You don't need antibiotics. If you've got a bacterial infection, we give it. So they've gotten better, but we can't even use the antibiotics we used to use as a kid. And the antibiotics are stronger and stronger. Sorry, I'm gonna get all sciencey for a second. And so we had the first case, there's MRSA, now there's super MRSA, if you didn't know that, methicillin resistant, blah, blah, blah. In India, God, it's probably been a couple years, the first bacterial infection on an individual that they could not find an antibiotic to treat it. He died. And it is like, it won't be nukes, it won't be global warming. It may literally be, we can no longer treat the bacteria that eat our faces off. And so bacterial resistance, right? Because we had MRSA as the methicillin resistant bacteria. How can we use herbs to make our antibiotics work better and to reduce or eliminate the ability of the bacterium to have resistance? So there's three main ways that bacteria create resistance. Efflux pump, which is basically a bacterium poop hole. And so it's like, oh, there's antibiotics, and it gets on them and they just poop it out through their efflux pump. It's horrible oversimplification, but quorum, yay, you were in high school or college and you had to get everybody to agree. Quorum when we talk about bacteria, is about communication. And so Sun Tzu in The Art of War said, if you want to win a battle, break the lines of communication. So bacterium literally communicate with each other and say, there's poison coming, run, put up your defenses. So if we can block their ability to communicate, then they're not able to react to whatever antibiotics or herbs and stuff we're using. So that's another way they create resistance. And then biofilms are more commonly known, but biofilms, I call it a Klingon cloaking device. Sorry. But basically it's a slime that covers it and hides the bacterium from our immune system. So how do we break down biofilms so that our body's innate immune system can go, hey, you don't belong here, and kill it? And so these are the three primary ways that bacteria survive the antibiotics. There is volumes of research showing herbs affecting all of these. Andrographis and dandelion are probably my favorite. Yeah, these are cool Chinese herbs, sorry. But they're also Western herbs. Licorice is surprisingly effective. And Huanglian, there's nothing, the Huanglian, think of berberine, right? People are talking about berberine a lot, so it's an alkaloid. That's in golden seal, Oregon grapefruit, a few Chinese herbs, a few other yellow root if you grew up in Georgia or something and you're chewing yellow root for your teeth. So there's a number of herbs that contain that. Huanglian's convenient one. All of those work on all three aspects of that. There's a pre-made formula that I give with every round of antibiotics my clients take. So Andrographis formula, Shuanjin, Lian, Pian, whatever. They have varying variations of that in there. It hits all three of those parameters. And so, like, save the planet. No. Don't take antibiotics unless you need them. If you take them the way they were prescribed and to completion. And you can literally take these herbs with your antibiotics, make them work better, ideally along with the probiotics, so you're sparing the damage that this effective drug uses. So probiotics helps to restore all of that. Oh, oh, steroids. We didn't talk about steroids. Duh. Okay. You'll get these in your slides. There we go. Sorry, I almost forgot you. Um, so steroids, love them or hate them. If somebody's suffering, take some steroids. No big deal. Long-term use of steroids does horrible things. It slows healing. It just messes with the immune system, can cause weird weight gain. Moon face is the classic that we see with high dose or long-term use of steroids. But what I find is people with autoimmune disorders in particular, like, oh, I got a flare up. You start up there at 20 or 50 milligrams and you slowly titrate down. You get down to the last 5 milligrams of your formula and you get another flare up. And so you're on this roller coaster ride of your steroids that is horrendous. And they don't have a smaller dosage to taper slower. So I find that licorice has a steroidal-like action that changes. Remember, we said, how does something process through the body? Like the first slides, it slows the steroid's ability to process. And so it extends the half-life of the steroid and almost doubles it. So I like to use licorice to slowly taper people off as a positive side effect. So you start it on their last dose or two. You start with licorice and taper it down, and it's a more gradual landing for them. The Chinese have a cool formula called Xiaogan Tang. I usually use that. Smilax, which is the greenbrier smilax, it's a weed out here in the forest. Yummy snack, the root of that. In the islands, they call it sarsaparilla. There's another species that can be used the same. That works okay, especially for chronic skin conditions. I love the Smilax for that. It is specific for chronic skin condition, is steroidal-like in its action, not as good as licorice, but you can combine them together. The joy of formulation. Oh, yay, you guys can read those. Um, I You want to share this with your friends or whatever, I am going to put this up on YouTube for people to watch. It probably won't be able to read it as well. But you'll find it out there. For some reason it didn't record or something weird like that. Lots of cool classes coming up. Make sure you subscribe to the Traditional School of Herbal Studies, our email list. We won't spam you very often, occasionally. I'm pretty good at spamming people on Facebook for all the cool stuff coming on. Oh, I didn't show you all this. Resources. Yay, I did check my resource. Yeah, those are still the good resources, I think. This is the book. This is my #1 book that I like for herb-drug interactions. I can't actually see it. Oh, well. I'll pass this around as well. This is on the website under resources, herbal contraindications and drug interactions by Francis Brinker. He's a naturopath. Whoa! And he actually gives you the research. You decide whether it's in vivo, in vitro, all that cool stuff. He also talks about nutritional deficiencies caused by drugs. That's a whole nother 12 hours. I know essential oils are really popular. Please, like this, it's expensive. So if you're a professional with essential oils, you should own this book. If you're like, yeah, I'm not buying that book, it used to be like under 40 bucks or something. Please come in, sit at a desk and read through there. Essential oils are concentrated, isolated chemicals out of a plant, and they are not benign. They are super powerful with multitude of contraindications. This is written by a essential oil specialist and researcher. He's the one who compiled this from the research. So please don't believe some of the people who are selling you that shit. They are powerful, they are effective, but can also be harmful. Oh, pass that comb around. Other ones that I like this. I think they have an online resource. I don't use this one as much, but I will use it as a reference. This is Herb, Nutrient, and Drug Interactions, Clinical Implications, and Therapeutic Strategies. Mitchell Stargrove, I don't know, but Jonathan Treasure, I have a great deal of respect for him. And I believe it was reviewed by Torona Low Dog, who she's a badass, MD as well as herbalist. But this is a good reference. I believe they have an online version as well. if you're working with critters, it's not really an herb-drug interaction back, but you can't give the same herbs we give to humans to dogs and cats. Dogs, you kind of can. There are a few exceptions. Cats, there's a few more cautions. If we explore outside of those animals, the Chinese medicine folks, there's way fancier books on how to use our formulas, but I love this. It is based in some Chinese medicine, but it's meant for the general public. It gives you acupressure for your dogs and cats, and both Western and Chinese herbs to give based on patterns, and kind of does a nice job of explaining it. So if you got critters, this I have the $1 million books. This is the one I actually use the most. I know it's not herb drug interactions, but close enough. And since I said I like blood work, this is my tome. This is literally my favorite book for blood work, whether you're a practitioner or trying to understand your own blood work, just for your own self-care. It's a worthy investment. I don't think it's very expensive, but it really explains your blood work and talks about not just, ooh, I'm alive. It tells you how to thrive. That functional is about how to have the ideal blood work and what other blood tests you can order. And too often the doctors are not doing.
They talk about the range.
Yes. Yeah. It talks about the ranges, why, what they mean. And I'll pass this one around too. That you can tell I've used that one a wee bit. There's most of the books. There's some Chinese stuff. Sorry, that's just by that if you're into Chinese medicine. Yay, that was the first slide in case any of y'all missed that. Propaganda, cool stuff coming up this month. And I will say, for folks online, if I haven't lost you all, yeah, you're still there. I will try to find the chat, but feel free to, ooh, there's a few things in the chat. Oh shit, what did I just do? I probably need it with my eyes at this point. I'm tired. Feel free to unmute yourself if you've got a question. I will do my best to read this. Ba, ba, ba. You can email Trisha for the melanated patient. We do have a recording of that. Ba, 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 ba. Ba, 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 ba. All right. I think I got. All right. All right. For the folks present, questions, thoughts? Holy crap, my brain hurts. Yes.
Blood work classes coming up.
Yes. I don't know whether I'm teaching that or Trisha.
It's recommended for just like the beginner.
Yeah, I like that class. And we really focus in on just the CBC, the complete blood count, which is like white blood cells and red blood cells, and the CMP, which is the metabolic panel. It's like the liver enzymes and kidney function. I get so frustrated when I have somebody come in, they're like, I bring a copy of your blood work. Let me see that stuff. They're like, oh, the doctor said it was fine. I was like, I want to see it. And there's like 5 things out of range, not even my standards. Like they're in the red. And it was like, that's not normal. And I will say one thing about blood work. Every country's blood work is different of what the ranges are, because blood work is based on the average of the people who get their blood work done. And so our values change. How many of y'all went to get blood work when you were 20, 30, 40? Right. It was like, we only went if we were sick. We didn't go until we were like 40, 50, 60 and did our health maintenance. So our values are so skewed of if we averaged all the people going to get blood work, it was mostly sick people who were going to get their blood work. So that's normal. I'm like, screw that. I want the blood work of a 30-year-old who isn't going to Kegers. So it's really important we look at the ideal functionality of those, and I'll always run through like, yeah, how do you feel? And too often that isn't asked. I was just talking with one of the other practitioners here. She was like, they have every symptom of a thyroid disorder, but their blood work didn't show it. And they also didn't do enough testing to actually ascertain if there was like a secondary issue. Yeah.
Can any of the native St. John's wort species be used?
That is the $1 million question. I'm going to say kind of.
Okay.
So when we talk about St. John's wort, We usually think about depression, and it certainly has that function for that mild to moderate depression. But what we don't talk about is its antimicrobial effects. And so our native species do have a history of use for antimicrobial. And there was one other function of it, and I can't think of what it is, but it's not well known yet. I don't have a good understanding of it for the neuropathy, for nerve pain. There's a hint of there being used for depression, but like I'd probably use it in a pinch for, oh, I've got some weird viral outbreak. St. John's wort in general, our local or herbal commerce, is good for herpes outbreaks. So it's excellent for lemon balm and St. John's wort because of the nerve pain that people get with herpes outbreak, whether general or oral, doesn't matter. And shingles, which nobody wants me to ever say this, shingles, very common, is a herpes virus. So it's the herpes family of viral diseases. There's more than 13 now, but those are all effective for those.
Can you see in that the range for GHA for seminopaths?
I haven't, I hope they come out with one that's for other values. So they're just in that book, just the CBC and CMP. So they don't have any hormone values or any of the fancier stuff. Those are out there, but I like the simplicity and detail of this. So some of them are like, I always feel like some of them are trying to sell me something, or they go too far down the rabbit hole. Like I can be done in 5 minutes with that. But yeah, the hormone ranges are harder to get those down, and there is great debate. I would say for hormone regulation, one of my great frustrations is it is the functional medicine docs who don't get good training. They're just like, I'll make you 20 again. And they crank up things like testosterone way too high. And so saying, let's get you to a normal level where you don't have symptoms, and things like estrogen and testosterone are important for vaginal wall thinning, bone density. Those are good. And I'm not morally opposed, but I bet you 1 in 10 people, and those are just the ones that come to see me, they're cranking up things on 40-year-olds. They crank up their testosterone to lose weight, and they go bald, because that's what happens when you have too much testosterone. The body doesn't process it out well enough, and so it can cause too much muscle gain, too much. Yes, you lose fat, but I get frustrated when they're not looking at the whole person and they're trying to do something unnatural rather than create balance in their body. And herbs should be a part of that. Herbs have a long history of working on endocrine system issues and hormone issues in general, but also looking at how hormones are processed out of the body properly. And sometimes it's like sleep, making sure you have a proper amount of healthy fats. For all of our fat soluble hormones, they don't function without fat. And every cell in your body has a lipid wall, which is a fat wall. And so folks who are on a no fat diet end up having the worst endocrine issues of anybody at all. So if you want a weird way to check, look for bumpy things on your back of your arm. If this is really bumpy, you have an essential fatty acid deficiency and you need some omega-3s. If it's like, oh, smooth as a baby's butt, you're good. I literally, if I go on a bender eating crappy foods, and we all do that on occasion, it's not bad, but it's like, oh, that's not smooth. I'll just take fish oils for 2 weeks and it goes away. It's such a simple way to fix it. And it's a quick, easy check, because otherwise you're spending hundreds of dollars on fancy testing. It doesn't always give you the information you need. Right? Anybody else?
I have a question. You were talking about the interactions with St. John's wort, and I find that St. John's wort oil on like a wrist problem
Yes.
I find it really fabulous. And
So yes, you are 100% correct.
would that be
Right,
okay for like
yes.
interaction? It wouldn't interact with
Nope,
it.
you're totally fine. Thank you for saying that. I did not say that. Topical St. John's wort oil in particular, it should be red in color, is excellent and safe. Don't think twice about the herb drug interactions. It is my go-to for any kind of nerve issue. And that could be carpal tunnel, that could be neuropathy, diabetic neuropathy, chemotherapy neuropathy. Just slather that crap on there as much as you can. Good answer.
Yeah. And my other question is, are you very familiar with G6PD deficiency at all?
I'm not.
Okay.
I know of its existence, but I will not say something I'm well versed on.
Okay. Yeah, because some of the stuff makes me, I can't take berberine. That stuff kind of
Yeah.
bitter melon, stuff like that will make me go into hemolysis. And I just wondered how that
Well,
works.
that's no good.
Yeah.
That's, those genetic traits like that can be challenging even to discover them. But whether it's a genetic thing, which, is hard to circumvent, or the food sensitivities, there, you can't really test for those. I mean, you can, there's some blood tests that are sometimes good, but boy, when you start to find out all the hidden places those things are, you can go pretty far down the rabbit hole of like, holy crap. And it's so often a driver for, we're not seeing this, that the MDs have usually given up on you. Sometimes the functional medicine docs are way ahead on that. But so often you're like, I'm treating what I see. I know I've got it. Why isn't this working? Why is somebody having an adverse reaction? It oftentimes goes down to some food sensitivities or interesting genetic anomalies like that.
Yeah, I found out when I had my first child when they used to do genetic testing, which is question.
Oh, interesting.
And
Interesting.
it gave me clarity for my whole childhood why I
Yeah,
couldn't get my head off my desk.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah.
it's amazing.
No, good for you for figuring that out. Anybody else? Well, you guys are being easy on me. All right. I appreciate you all giving up your Friday night and hanging out. Okay, guess it's not done. You have Addie, welcome. Feel free to grab propaganda or harass anybody out there if you want. You can't leave the place with them, but if you're like, hey, oh yes. It's a weight workout. Just say, yeah, just ask and they'll let you sit in here. You can sit out and have a cup of tea or something in the tea trailer. Tea trailer is open Thursday through Sunday, 8 till 2. I made the herb teas myself and the syrups. No, sugar's bad for you. My syrups are raw.
And they're delicious.
Oh, you've already had it. Oh, awesome. I got a new one. I don't know if we'll have it ready on Sundays.
Thank you
When
very much.
you're very welcome. Hibiscus, lemongrass, rosemary, a little licorice in it for the summertime cooling off. I was like, why haven't I done this yet? It's so freaking hot out. So
Yeah.
that one's gonna be rocking.
I had the coffee.
Oh, yes, the coffee with a K. That's one of my graduates created that. It's so good. Her stuff's amazing. Excellent. Wow, I gotta order some more of that too. We're almost out.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Would you
Yeah.
recommend us taking your Chinese herb program?
Not while you're in school.
Okay.
It'll just confuse the shit out of you.
Okay.
Yeah, pass your boards.
I don't know, but it's like your style.
Yeah.
All right, pass the boards, please. All right.
Yeah, it's like, no, give me lots of money.
Yes.
Yeah, of course.
My name's Tori, by the way.
Okay.
Nice to meet you. I have an herb company
Yeah.
and it's manufactured currently in Colorado, but I want to move it down here to Florida. So
Ooh.
I happen to know somebody who can manufacture everything's capsuled formulas, sourcing the whole herbs, and they powder themselves.
So you've already got the sources for that. You just need somebody to like
I
run it
want
through
it
the thing.
in-house in Florida because my shipping situation in Colorado is not panning out. So I need to bring it here.
I know there are some folks doing that in Tampa. God, there's a company and I haven't sourced them in a long time, but they were specific on labeling and they would know the
Mhm.
manufacturing plants. I know there's some in Florida. I work with a manufacturer on the East Coast.
Mhm.
And there's a few small, it always depends on your volume and all of that
Yeah.
kind of crap. There are a few small manufacturers who are like doing a little bit better than hand.
Okay. Okay.
There's also, just again, depending on all of that, there's the guy who makes the Evil Bone Water,
Mhm.
just bought a facility, and I know he's not utilizing all of it. And so there might be a conversation to be had there.
Okay.
He's crazy as a loon and a really nice guy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, cool.
No, he's a lot of fun, but like it's so funny. He was in a smaller facility, and he was like, I need to, I need to expand. I just got this other contract, and so I happened to get an email on. I was like, this sounds perfect for him, and I sent it to someone he bought. He just like
That's a good
just
connection.
moved in there, yeah. So,
Wow. Okay.
but if you want, email me.
Okay.
And because I'll forget 2 seconds from now, and I won't remember his contact. So,
Okay.
but he would be a good start. And if I can think of the lawyer, there's there is a company here, but I wouldn't get involved with them that do a sexual tonic, but it's all illegal as far as I'm concerned. Like I know it's laced.
Okay.
And so I know they do some manufacturing here, but
Do you think it's a bad idea if I just move my manufacturing at least to the East Coast, but then have these big bulk orders shipped down here for me to ship myself? Do you think it's expensive to have that like extra layer of?
I mean, it's definitely the more
Yeah,
getting stuff as
okay.
close as you can, like
Okay.
have a central collection point is definitely easier. Like
Yeah.
you can have a housing warehouse and manufacturing somewhere else, but like the more you got to drive and
know.
not have
Okay.
hands-on
That's
is,
what I figured.
yeah. I mean, obviously depends on the volume. You're doing a 500,000 units, like screw it. Who
Yeah,
cares?
yeah.
If you're doing a smaller operation, then like, um, and if you're doing like, again, hiring some people to encapsulate the crap. I mean, it's practically by hand, even the best automation.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just quality control with that.
Okay.
Is hire a couple of high school kids and put some hairnets and gloves on them. Yeah.
Okay. And then one more thing for you. I am curious on taking a full course that you have here, but I would like to know, like, what is the reason someone would choose Ayurvedic or a Chinese system over Western? I would say I'm very foundationally based in Western.
Yeah.
My thing is being a nutritionist, but I've been trained in specific Western herbal formulas to complement
Okay.
food,
Yeah.
which is why I have some context about
All
what's
right.
going on here. But why one system over the
I
other?
mean, I always say it's like, no, I love Chinese everything, then I'd be like, oh, go there. If you're like, I want to run away to acupuncture school,
Mm.
do the Chinese.
Mm.
If you're like, I want to be a clinician, that's all I want to do, the Chinese, I feel like is 99% focused on being a practitioner.
Oh, interesting.
The Western, you can go like we do clinical practice in the last year,
Mhm.
a little bit more advanced stuff. But they're more familiar. We focus on a lot of our bioregional plants. I try to bring in as much of our local stuff, tropical stuff as I can. And good energetics and diagnostics. And so that gives you more latitude. We do more medicine making there. We talk more about incorporation into foods and things like that. So I generally, if people are like, I don't know, I don't feel particularly drawn to that, and I don't have one of the, I'd be like, just do Western.
Okay.
It
Yeah.
gets you into the same place. They're good clinicians coming out of my Western program,
Okay.
but it gives you, maybe I want to manufacture stuff. Maybe I just want to dabble. Maybe I want to do spiritual work with it. Like that gives you more context for a wider range of stuff, I feel like.
Okay. I
Yeah.
figured that's why
Yeah.
I was Cool. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Yeah, nice to talk to you.
Yes, indeed. All right, I'm going to turn this thing off, presumably, unless anybody has a last second question.
I have one question online.
Oh, yeah.
You were just talking about the Western program. Is that what you were saying was more
Yeah.
broad?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. That I was
Yeah,
just
it's
clarifying.
one of those like I think of it as prep school for acupuncture school. It's like it's phenomenal for like I want to be a clinician just because of the
Mhm.
depth of detail. But
So
for the
I'm a nurse practitioner, but I want to really kind of complement my practice. So I from what you were saying, it sounded more like that would be the
oh yeah,
direction then, Western.
yes. So
Yeah.
it's so funny. I'm going to say either program, but especially the Chinese, you're going to like nurse practitioners. I think are super smart. I think they do a better job than a lot of folks. But in both Western and Chinese, but very much in Chinese, the liver's not the liver. And so you have to remove your medical brain for about 6 months to a year and then put
Oh.
it back in and you'll be
Oh,
brilliant.
put it back in.
Yeah.
Mm.
Obviously, when you go to work, keep it in place, but it's really challenging because and it's my favorite example in Chinese, uh, the liver, besides doing good liver stuff, is also responsible for menstruation, irritability, anger, and depression. It's reflected
Ah.
in the eyes, controls the tendons, and it's why your shoulders go up in your ears. And so it's like we expand well beyond. And in practice, when you start to say, okay, I see these things, the raging alcoholic with the red eyes, uh,
Mm.
his liver enzymes may or may not be fine.
Mm.
And yet, so we see it's when we think of any herbal tradition, it's before we had blood work and MRIs and all the cool stuff that we have now. And so they didn't even have autopsies to say, like, oh, these are the organs of the body. We didn't have a microscope. So they had to come up with a system to explain their observable sciences. And
Ah.
so they came up with interesting ideas that have held pretty darn true for 10,000 years.
So it's
And
possible even to do Western and then do Chinese after,
and some people do that.
and then
Yeah,
try and kind of have this
yeah.
broad knowledge of, huh,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, yeah. It's I definitely have I'm gonna say 10-15% do both, and they're dangerous. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
They hear the same stories over and over. But I like the latitude the Westerner program provides because we literally are creating formulas for every client.
Oh, cool.
Uh, and the Chinese fills in kind of all the gaps and gives you a for more complex diseases. I really like the Chinese. That
Awesome.
and so I'm gonna say I keep my feet half in each.
Uh-huh.
Just kind of depends. Sometimes my whim or the desire of the person, the form of the medicine, all of those will determine which direction I go. Or if I'm really feeling squirrely, I mix and match.
There you go.
Do a formula with both in there, and yeah. So it's
Awesome.
without a doubt, like obviously you have the ability to digest the information if you're a nurse practitioner, but it's a lot.
Yeah.
I discourage everybody from doing both at the same time. It's
Oh,
overwhelming.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's way too
Agree
much.
with you.
Yeah,
Especially how you're describing it. It's like, you basically
yeah,
have to unpack everything you know and
yeah.
yeah.
New
Okay.
language, all that crap. It's great to have the Western language.
May I ask you one more question?
Of course.
So I know the 101 Herbalism 101 is required first. So if I had signed up
Mhm,
for that for December, when
mhm.
does your Western opening for is it a March start date, I believe,
Don't
or
quote
January?
me. Yeah, I was going to say it's February or March. I always forget. Those kind of details I forget all the time.
Yeah.
But yes, so there's and the 101. So it's like there'll be a bunch of 101s. Like we
Hmm.
usually do 5 or 6 of them before the foundation starts. One of the nice things I always tell people is like for any classes, you can sit through them again. We don't charge you again. So like the 101, if there's space, you can sit in the classroom or at least check it out online.
Oh,
Uh,
wow. It's
because
very
I
absorbed in
actually want people to know this shit. So I was like, you're like, I'm gonna sit through that foundation class again. I didn't
Yeah,
understand all of that. I'm
repetition.
like,
Absolutely.
because
Awesome. Well, thank you.
you're very welcome. Are you in the Tampa Bay area or?
I am. I'm in just north of Tampa. I'm in Land O'Lakes, which is just
Okay,
north.
all right,
Yeah.
not too far then. Yeah,
Yeah.
like all the classes are online, and they certainly we get a lot of it, but it's like it's so much better in person for
Oh,
all the time.
definitely. St.
Yeah,
Pete's not far. I mean, I think
good.
it was
Yeah,
like an hour and a half,
hour and a
maybe
half.
hour and 20
Yeah,
minutes. Really wasn't too bad. But
good, good,
awesome. Well,
good, good.
thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right,
Have a
we'll see
great
you in
night.
class. Yeah,
Yes, I
you
Hey,
hope
too.
so. Thank you.
hey,
All
Bob,
right.
real quick before you go, I had a quick
Yeah.
question.
Oh, hey.
Hey, it's regarding the blood work class.
Yeah.
When you do that, do you go through breaking down the lymphocytes into their ratios and pretty much like with the ratios within the lymphocytes that could show whether it could be just like some kind of like sub condition of like a bacterial infection or a viral thing that's kind of
Yeah,
like
I mean, from
under.
that perspective, yeah, if it's high or low, does that mean? And it's so funny. There was, God, what was it? Somebody was like, I don't understand. All my values are great, but this one is screwed up. And there's those convoluting factors like either chronic viral infection or just a recent one. She had just started a new high intensity exercise regimen, and it threw off,
Oh,
and it totally jacked one of her values. And it's like, no, that's normal. Like even like you just run a marathon, your PSA will be elevated for like 2 weeks,
right.
and so we look at it always depends, each class. If somebody asks a question, we'll go deeper.
Okay.
um some people are like, I just want to understand my own blood work.
Right, right, right. No, cool, cool, cool. Because I was thinking about whether I wanted to do that. But do yours offer the biomeds that you use or no?
Nah,
Okay. All right.
I gave
I mean,
up on
that's
it.
fine. I'm
It's
just
such
trying
a
to
pain in
see,
the
like,
ass.
I figured it might be.
Yeah,
Because that was something that I was interested in too. So,
yeah,
like, all right,
yeah.
cool. Well, thank
All
you.
right,
I
well, I hope we
appreciate
see you
it.
in class soon.
All right. Thanks. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, I'm gonna get out of here. I gotta go eat some food. If I can figure out how to turn this thing off. Uh, Good night, all.